An inspirational people interview on the Share Life podcast. I'm here with my longtime friend, Deenie McKeever. Deenie, say hello.
Hello.
I'm Jason Scott Montoya, the host, and today we're going to talk about our relationship. Deenie and I met almost 20 years ago. It's 2024, and I believe we met in 2025.
Mhm.
And we were both in Atlanta. She's in Atlanta, I'm in Atlanta. The way that this happened is I was in Arizona at the time, and me and my wife got married. We went on our honeymoon, and then the day we got back, we packed up everything and moved to Atlanta. And I transferred to the Art Institute of Atlanta to finish my degree there, and I needed some work. So this guy, his name was Derek, and he owned a little computer repair company called Computer Connections. And so he put a job posting in the Art Institute of Atlanta. Hey, I need someone that can do this IT work. And I was like, oh, I'm a computer guy. I grew up with them. I knew how. I never had a job doing it, but I always figured out how to fix things. And so I walked. The other thing was me and my wife at the time, we shared a car. So his office was literally like across this, like it was around the corner across the street from the school. So I could walk. I walked over to his office to just say, "Hey, I want the job." And so I got there, and he's like, "You know what? You seem like a great guy. I would love to hire you, but I had this curly hair, and it was really long at the time. It went down to my neck."
Remember.
And he says, as much as I like you and I would love to hire you, I can't send you off to companies and people's houses with that mop on your head. So I'm sorry you don't have the job. So that night, me and my wife, I remember going to the mall and I said, I need to chop all my hair off. So I chopped it all off and I just went back to him the next day and said, I'm ready to start working. And he
Oh,
hired me. So
that
one
was
of the first jobs that he did was he assigned me to go to Deenie's house up in this place called Cartersville. It was like 30 minutes north of Atlanta or something. And back then it was less developed, so it was like driving through the forest, and I had to go through the yellow brick road, and eventually I found her house, and and that's when we first met, and I helped Deenie with her computers. She was always the she would you were born in 1937, but you were always for your age particularly, like you were always on the cutting edge of, you had the newest technology, the newest computer or whatever. And so I started helping you, and that our relationship evolved over the years, and we've had our ups and downs, and laughs and cries, and yells and screams, but we've continued to persevere through it, and we have been great friends through it. And I think for me, one of the things that I think about in our terms of our relationship is just how much you've poured out your life into me, and how much you've given to me, and as particularly as someone who was an exile from my homeland. I left Atlanta, or I left Arizona, which is friends and family, all these people I knew. And me and my wife moved across the country to a foreign land where we knew no one.
oh,
And you were one of the anchor points that kept me from going insane.
or
So yeah,
drug situation.
there's a little bit of an introduction.
It's special. It was special.
Yeah. So you were born in 1937. You've got a lot of history. You know a lot of the history of Atlanta. I'd like to dive into your story. You've got a lot of stories to share with us, and lessons you've learned, and weird experiences, and scary experiences, and fun
Mm.
experiences, and sad experiences. But let's start with what it was like growing up for you in the little city of Atlanta in 1937.
Well, Jason, thank you for having me on. I'm honored to share my many stories, and you have a lot if you're 86. And so uh, I just pray folks hear through them my encouragement to be the best you can be, no matter what
Yeah.
obstacles come in your path. I wasn't always totally successful. There have been many painful times and challenges and big fears and regrets many times. But my faith in God and Jesus and their love for me kept me trying to lead the life they wanted me to do. And that's sort of my theme across my head. And in no way am I a perfect person. I'm just trying to be what I'm supposed to be for
Hmm.
their big plan and not screw it up. So
Yeah.
But going back to Atlanta, people younger than me, a lot younger than me, would just never imagine it. Atlanta was so small. It was like a small town. And
Yeah.
the farthest northern point was Buckhead. I don't know if you
Yeah.
can hear the thunder behind me or not, but there's a big
I heard
thunder.
a little grumbling, but not. It sounded
Not,
like maybe your dog was growling at you.
my dog's gone. He's gone.
uh,
Um, but Atlanta was the northern part was Buckhead, and the biggest store there was Sears, which is
mm,
no longer there. But it was just a very small town, and it was. I actually have a story to tell about Sears. I had a wonderful friend in Atlanta, and she was always into everything. And Judy got me into things. And so there was an Episcopal uh, house downtown that catered to children who were in difficult situations. They maybe had no
mm,
money or food or all of those things, and the church was trying to help them. And so Judy got a call, and they asked her if she would take some children who needed. They were going to take the children to the beach, and they
yeah.
wanted Judy to take them to buy some shoes. They didn't have any tennis shoes or a bathing suit
Mm,
or shorts or anything. And so she called me and she said, Deenie, can your children, I'm taking my children, and can you bring Dee and Dana, and we'll go to Sears with the kids. We've got the kids. So we go to Sears. And now understand, we're very different. Our kids are different from them. They look different. They're a different color. So we just go in. We're going to just go buy these cute kids some things to go. And we were really
yeah.
excited about giving it, being able to do that for them. And they were excited. We go in the store, and there's just this wall. It's like people backed up. I mean, these are kids, and people backed up all away from us, like what are you
Yeah.
doing? And
Oh wow.
Judy and I were, for a while, we were oblivious to it. But then we couldn't get
Yeah.
waited on. It went on and on. And so, they were staring at us and all of that. And we finally did, get the kids' clothes and everything. And we actually went to McDonald's and had the same thing happen. It was just awful. I didn't think we were going to get food at McDonald's. So,
Wow. How old were you at that time?
let's see, that was in the 1950s. So I was
Okay.
probably late 20s. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
I married early. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was just before segregation really came about, and they had sit-ins and everything in Atlanta. So, um, but I got to thinking about it as I was thinking about talking about it, and I thought, we didn't understand the difference. I mean, we just saw some kids that need some help, and our kids had a
Yeah.
lot of, and so
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends that were different from me, different color, different age, different whatever. But as I grew through this experience back then, and I realized how insensitive, or maybe unaware, unconscious, ignorant
Yeah.
of
Hmm.
what the black people or anybody different felt.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and this happened to be some children that were African American, but it could have been somebody in a wheelchair. This happens a
Yeah.
lot in different things. So
Yeah.
it was a big. I was devastated when I opened that in me and said, "Where have I been ignorant about it?" So anyway, I just that was eye opener to me to see how much anger there was in the world, but I think it was more ignorance than anger. There were wrong assumptions and ideas about what the difference meant. Um, but that's the way Atlanta was, and then we had all the stuff that we just spoke about at that time,
Yeah.
or even earlier when I was in my teens. Um, we used to a group of girls would get together on Saturday, and we would ride the bus down
Hmm.
town, and we would
Okay.
shop at Riches and Davison's, which was Macy's, and we could wander around downtown Atlanta, and it was great. I mean, there was no
Yeah.
safety rules or fear of guns or anything, and it was just a different world then, totally different world. Just
Yeah. Well, I
it
want
makes
to.
me sad.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to peel out a couple layers there. So, kind of, one, you mentioned, Buckhead. Sears is like the only store, which is like, what is Sears? Tell us what a Sears is. I don't know if even people know what a Sears
Oh
is because it's no
gosh,
longer
okay.
around.
Well, Sears was like the all American store. It had a
Yeah.
catalog that was 2 feet deep, and you ordered your stuff out of there. It was sort of like a oh gosh, Tractor Supply, um, uh, J.C. Penney, Home Depot. I mean, it was clothes and everything else, and it was just one of the main. I mean, Riches and Davison's were more the club, more house things and clothes,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Church clothes, maybe. But Sears was an order catalog mostly, and
Yeah.
it was
Ah.
just a giant store, but it had everything at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine it changed quite a bit by the time I visited one in the 90s. I'm sure it was quite a different
Mm-hmm.
experience. But now you talked about your experience kind of helping these people that you had no qualms with helping, and then sort of the way that other people treated you and them as a result of helping them. I'd be curious, what would you? Because I think when people may not think of themselves or may not think that they're outright racist, but when you talk about like that ignorance, sometimes they can get defensive. And so, what would be your recommendation um, for people, to kind of be willing to listen and hear things that might be different than how they've experienced it, and not to take that defensive approach? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I think one thing is fear. I was saying to you
Hmm.
earlier that I think that when I get over out of my niceness, and I get maybe ticked off about something more than I should or whatever. I think it's
Yeah.
fear. I'm scared of
Hmm.
something deep down, and I'm afraid something's
Yeah.
going to change or somebody's going to hurt me or. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of times that's it. That when someone's different, you and maybe you have a thing in your head that they're going to hurt you, you know, then
Hmm.
you sort
Yeah.
of guard yourself and back off. And
Yeah.
and also sometimes it's awkward. You don't know what to do with them because they speak a different.
Hmm.
You're in your bubble. A lot of us were in
Yeah.
bubbles of
Yeah.
people like us, houses like
Hmm.
us, cars, schools, all of that. We were in a world of a bubble. And
Yeah.
fortunately for me, I came out of it and was able to go around the world and see things and also be around different people and learn that
Hmm.
basically we're all alike. But
Yeah.
we need to get rid of our assumptions and ignorance and figure it out, find out what's
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be curious, do you have any memories like Martin Luther King Jr., like when he was in Atlanta or even when he was assassinated, or any of this? Like, do you remember that anything specific about Atlanta?
Yes, there was a drugstore right across the street from Davison's, and we would go there and get grilled cheese sandwiches and cherry cokes, and we'd
Yeah.
line up on all the little seats at the counter. Well, that's where they did the sit-ins, so it was very
Mm.
much, oh my gosh, they're not giving them food. Where we could go in and get our sandwich and coke just fine.
Oh,
There
wow.
was a restaurant that I used to go to a lot that they did a lockdown in, and so for me personally, I could relate to that. Not long ago, I worked with someone who was helping wounded veterans, and I went down
Yeah.
to Auburn Avenue and in that area to see her. And Martin Luther King's home growing up was down the street, and I
Oh, okay.
sat there in the car and just thought about that for a long time and thought, gosh, well, that was where we was. I remember when President Kennedy got shot, and that was huge in my mind about, and I think everybody's. So it was all kind of a whole big time of upheaval.
Yeah. For those of us who live in Atlanta, just a real quick fact. Was there a 285? Was there a 85?
No,
Was there a
oh Lord,
75?
no expressways. I mean, just imagine Atlanta with no expressways. There were none.
Mm.
It was no cell phones and no expressways. Yeah, and
And
that's a whole
were there
different
any
world.
horse-drawn carriages?
I want to go back to that because I have a carriage and I drive it, and I would love to go to the grocery store in it instead of the. Um,
Maybe Amishness is your calling here.
yes, yeah, I'm working on that.
All right. So in when you were 5, you moved to Washington D.C. So
Yes.
let's tell us about why. And so this is this is 1942. So this is like World War II
Hmm.
is unfolding before you as you're a kid.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your father and your grandfather and their artificial limb business and your visit to the Pentagon.
Okay.
You can kind of go where you want to start, but let's jump to Washington D.C.
Well, that was quite a time. I was an only child at that point, and so Daddy was in the ROTC at Georgia Tech, and that means that you need to serve, somewhere.
Hmm.
And so, but during Tech, Daddy didn't have any money; he had nothing, and he had to work 6 months to get enough money to go to the next 6 months at Tech, and he would go off and
Yeah.
on and off and on. And then when he
And,
graduated,
and for those that go to Georgia Tech, like what was Georgia Tech? Was it just like a single building, or was it a house?
it was a little more than that. It was really well known, and the only guys went. There were no girls there.
Hmm.
The only girls
Were they
that
not allowed, or they just didn't want to
no,
go?
there were no girls. No, it wasn't. They weren't allowed there. And I may
Yeah.
be wrong about that, but that was my concept at the time. And maybe
Yeah.
some women went, but it would have been very few and far between. Most of the
Yeah.
women went to Agnes Scott in Atlanta, and they would be the ones that would date the tech boys and stuff. But
Okay.
Daddy, back in his time, he was he may have been money poor, but he was smart and he was a leader. But he was just really a very special guy, and he's always loved
What
tech.
was your father's name?
Dan McKeever,
Dan.
and
Yeah.
he. One thing we used to say was he had two children, my brother and me, and Georgia. Three children, my brother and me, and Georgia Tech, because he really loved it. He did a lot of things after school too to
Yeah.
enhance it. But back then, he had gotten out of college, but he had two things going on. One was he was needed to serve in ROTC, but not necessarily go into um, the war. But
Hmm.
in the meantime, his mother-in-law, this is not his mother, but his mother-in-law, my mother, uh, her husband died, and he owned an artificial limb business. And her brother-in-law said he would buy her out for a certain amount of money. And Daddy said, "You can't live on that the rest of your life," because she was just 50. And he said, I need to help you, and I will take over the business and run it for you so that you can be the president of the business, and I'll be the treasurer. And we'll work it out
Yeah.
that you have a salary. And that's what he did. And that's why he went
Hmm.
into he went into that business because helping somebody. And I always watched that. That was something that, he didn't have to do it. He could have, whatever, but he did. Well, then when he got into the business, he could have been exempted from going to war because he was in a business
Yeah.
that helped the war. But he felt very strong that he should be part of it. Well, they sent him to the Pentagon. He did get involved, and so he was sent to the Pentagon. Daddy.
Now, is the Pentagon is it the same building that we now know, or
Yes.
is it a different building? Okay.
Same building. And it's the large octagon. And back
Yeah.
then, I could go into it with him. Nowadays, boy, you can't get in unless you know somebody. And
Yeah.
I got to go in with him. I got to see his office. I was, he was always putting me on his lap and doing things with me. As far as, I could do this thing on the desk. And before he went there, though, he was at Fort McPherson in Atlanta. And I remember sitting at this tall telephone thing. If you ever saw the Lily Tomlin show where she said, Alan, we're going to answer the telephone like this, and she would put those long cords into the thing, and well, I got to put those long cords in and get the people to their phone, and I'll never forget all that. That was really fun. But Daddy actually was the officer of the day at Fort Mac when the call came in to say we're at war. So that was gives me chill bumps now.
So when you say we're at war, like what did that mean at that moment? Was that
they were calling to tell him that America had joined the World War II with Britain.
Yeah. So this was not even known to the public then at the time, or was this okay?
That was the first calls. But then Daddy went to the Pentagon, and we were there a couple of years, and went to Philadelphia, and then we came back to Atlanta. But while he was there, he just made such a difference wherever he went. He's a very logistics person. He was organized.
Yeah.
He could see something that needed to be done and figure out how to do it better. So he got a lot of medals, but he didn't go to war. He didn't go in the trenches with the guns. He was at the Pentagon sending all the materials and things they needed. And he organized all the stuff that was going over there to the soldiers in the battle. And so he won a lot of medals. And I told the people at school, I said, my daddy won the American Legion of Honor. And I think it's like, no, he didn't win that one, Deenie. Yes, he did, because I thought he was a king to me. So anyway, but he did so many wonderful things there. And then when the war ended, we went back to Atlanta. But I have to tell a story about the Pentagon. I may tear up in some of this. Y'all just have to live with.
I figure we'll cry and laugh and scream throughout this.
I had the privilege of going to the Pentagon not long ago. It was in 2008. Well, that's a long time ago, I guess. But anyway, I had a chance to be in Washington, and a friend of mine's son had a position in the Pentagon. And it was right after it had been bombed in 2000.
After 9/11. Yeah.
Not yet. So it had been repaired, but they were getting ready to renovate the area that my daddy had been in. And so Mike took me into the Pentagon. Oh, I know, it was just amazing and breathtaking, really, because it was different. It was, it was grown up too, but it after seeing it be bombed and all of that happening, and then to reverse my brain to go back to when I saw Daddy there, and it was 1940, so the pipes were all exposed, and you had different doorknobs, and it was like when you see a movie in the old cars. Well, this was like the old Pentagon, and Mike took me through the whole thing. It was just so special to be able to go in there and remember Daddy and our times there. So
what was the trigger? Like, they could have just not had you come back, but did you ask, or did he invite you?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
What was the trigger to going? Like, why were you invited back in 2008? What was the trigger?
Well, there's another story later on that I'll tell you about.
Ties into it.
I invited Mike to go with me somewhere. So when he heard about the Pentagon with me, I guess I told him. I'm sure
he must have known the story.
He was working. Then he treated me to that. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Now,
That's a teaser.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess to pull a few more layers out of this, was your dad's degree, was it related to this artificial limb business, or was it unrelated
Mm-mm.
in terms of his Georgia Tech degree?
No, we kind of laughed about it because he got an engineering degree. I mean, he was smart and he did
Okay.
a lot of good things, but he really didn't know how to plug plugs in very well. We asked him not to fix anything at home, but he was an organizer. So what
Mm.
he did in that business, he did make them. He did make the limbs, and he did go in the dark days. You traveled in your car and took a piece of wood, or maybe you had done something to it at the office, but you took glue and leather and these pieces of wood, and you went to someone's home and you worked on building them a leg. Nowadays, they get
Yeah.
the computer out and draw your leg, and it's done. It's really
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
what he did. So no, he did not. But you know what? He actually, one of his awards at Tech was that he was in the Hall of Fame for engineering. So
Wow.
he just did really good things, but you never knew it. He was very humble, and he never he did anything for ego. He just did it because it was the right thing to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
And so how did his I guess how did he like, so this is World War II, which is like a big deal. Um how did you conceptualize it? How did he conceptualize it? Do you remember how it affected him? How
I
he
did.
sort of processed it
Yeah.
emotionally? Yeah.
After the war, he was asked to go to all the bases and close them. So he went, and it affected him big time because he saw the damage, and it was heartbreaking for him. I mean, he just I think it really hit him hard. He was like the others. I mean, he did not go when they were killing each other, but he saw the
Yeah.
damage and he saw the people,
Yeah.
and it was crushing. But he was also glad that he could be the one that says, "You can go home now. We can close the base
Yeah.
now. You can go home." And that felt good. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you? How did you conceptualize the war when you were just a little kid? When you were 5 to 8-ish, I guess?
The thing that I think, um, because Daddy wasn't overseas, then I didn't have that fear, for him. But we had to ration, and Mother and I would go to the grocery store, and we had little books, ration books, and we could only buy a certain amount of sugar or a certain amount of this or that, and we had little stamps, and we would put them
Hmm.
in the book because after we bought them, then that's all you get. And so we didn't
Yeah.
have everything we wanted to eat, but it never really affected me big time. I was little, and
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest thing. I like going to the commissary, and
Yeah.
it was fun. But that was,
Exciting. Yeah.
yeah. I don't. I mean, I was 6 through 10, basically,
Yeah.
and so the only thing that I didn't get a good education at some point because my mother reminded me that I went to the teacher and said I don't know how to read, and that was
Yeah.
like the second grade or something.
What was your
And
mom's name?
D, we
D.
all go back to the Dee River in Scotland somewhere. My
Okay.
grandmother was Bessie D, mother was D, and when I was born, Daddy didn't want two D's, so he called me Deenie, and that's why my name is Deenie. Yeah, my
Yeah.
daughter's
Oh,
name's
okay.
Dee. Yeah,
Yeah. So
one.
the other question I would ask, yeah, is well, I guess two questions. One is how did the war affect your mom? Did it affect her much at all, or did she uh was it I don't know how, how close, or in our current world, with the internet and stuff, we kind of see so much of what's going
Yeah,
on, like
yeah.
particularly like in Ukraine right now, and
Hmm.
and uh, um, and in Israel. Those are things you probably just didn't see in World War II, but even though it was happening. So I'm just trying to understand the way that people understood it, made sense of it, saw that kind of thing.
Well, even though we weren't
So with
on
your
a
mom, yeah,
yeah, we weren't on an army base there. We didn't live on it, and we didn't live on the base at Fort Mac either. We were in our own house, but we were
yeah,
surrounded by military. I mean, my school was all military kids, and I think the biggest thing was the absence. Daddy worked so long and hard and late
Yeah.
hours, and I can feel that she was there a lot with me by ourselves. That was
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing, and being, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money because you didn't make money in the Army. We still don't a whole lot now, I think, and um, but it was hard because we were rationing and that kind of thing. So it was different. I didn't I didn't feel we were poor by any means. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I know that she worried about it all. She actually one day I found an old budget book that she had, and in the budget she had budgeted 5 cents for an ice cream cone for both of them.
Oh, wow.
She knew every
Yeah.
dime and nickel,
A
literally.
5-cent ice cream.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a
See,
miracle.
I knew that she, had to really figure out the money
Yeah.
and be sure we were okay.
Now, when you were younger, like, in that age, or even maybe shortly after the war, I mean, did you have any conceptualization of the Nazis or communist Soviet Union? Was any of that something that you were
Not
aware
like
of or
now.
knew
Not like
about?
now. You're right. I mean, we know on TV everything. I know all the stuff now. But back
Yeah.
then, we really didn't. We
Hmm.
didn't have cell phones. We didn't have a TV. I remember when we got a TV. It was like the kid shows, I mean, and Ed Sullivan. I mean, we didn't have news. We had news. I'll tell you where we had news, and you've seen it sometimes, probably in movies or something. And then in the movie theater, they would have these.
Mm.
Here's the news of the day, and they would show you a shot of the war, but it was very
Yeah.
distant. They were over there, we were here. I just
Yeah.
cringe at what the British people had to go through. Very scary.
Yeah.
One thing we
Yeah.
did talk
Yeah.
about a lot, though, were bomb shelters, and a lot of people in Atlanta built bomb shelters at different times, especially when the nuclear
Like underground or just
bomb
inside their house?
underground. They
Yeah.
built, and it was like when the nuclear bomb came, and people got to really scared, and so that was something that
Yeah.
happened then. Mm-hmm.
So when you're 10, you move back to Atlanta. You don't have a cell phone. I guess, but you go to Westminster High School. You're a cheerleader. You're hoping somebody comes to the game, so you have someone to cheer for. And it's quite different now than it was when you were there. So tell us about life when you came back to Atlanta from DC.
Well, when I came back, I was 10, so I was in grammar school at that point. But I want to tell you a funny cell phone story. So we lived on Collier Road. A lot of people know where that is, near Piedmont Hospital. And I loved the house. I had a little playhouse in the back. And my brother was born 10 years younger. When I was 10, he was born. So he was 10 years younger.
Yeah.
He was always my baby. So anyway, I can remember that house. And now Collier Road's a very busy road, but back then it was quiet and we could play and stuff. Anyway, one night we were at dinner, and Daddy had a friend named Randy Whitfield. And Randy was in the technology business. And Randy called Daddy. We had phones in the house, on the wall kind of thing. And he called Daddy, and he said, "So, Dan, what are you doing? Where are you? What, blah, blah." And Dad said, "Well, I'm just here right at the house." And he said, "Well, I am too. I'm out in your front yard." And Daddy said, "You what?" And he went out, and Randy had this giant, I can't get my hands in here, giant phone. And he was talking to Daddy. And that was the first cell phone. He had,
What year was that?
if I was 10,
Or
it
what
was
decade?
47. 1947.
So they had a version of a cell phone in 1947.
It was what wasn't out to the public, but Randy had one, and they were working on it. And that was,
Wow.
yeah, we couldn't believe it. Daddy was so funny. He was like a little boy. It was so amazing. We never even thought.
In 1947, there's just nothing like that.
how did you get to talk to somebody, in the air? I'm still
Yeah.
saying that, but yeah, that was really fun. That was really fun. I'll never forget that. But jumping from primary school, elementary, um, back then again, Westminster got started. We had Northside and North Fulton schools in our area. That was it. Everything else was South or Grady or Decatur. And
Mm.
Dr. Presley wanted to start this school there, and he wanted it to be a Christian school. And so it
Yeah.
started very small, and they actually took girls from Washington Seminary, which was an all-girls school, and Knapp's, which was North Avenue Presbyterian School, and brought those in. But they were juniors and seniors. I went in as
Yeah.
I was 15, and I went
Yeah.
sophomore. So I had been to Northside, and my little group of friends, we decided that we would go to this new school. So we went to Westminster,
Mm.
and then they brought in boys at our age. So that's when they went
Yeah.
in. And
Yeah.
we had just enough guys to play football, and we played in the afternoon because we didn't have any lights or a stadium. And as you said, the story is I wished somebody would come beside my mother so we could cheer. But yeah, cheerleader. But
So how does that? So you're. I imagine this dirt road, and then there's like a half grass field and a bunch of kids on it trying to play a game. How does that
basically,
differ to? How does that differ to how that school is today?
it looks like one of the largest college campuses in the whole United States, maybe the world. I don't know. It's huge. We saw some growth during my years, the last 2 years there.
Yeah.
But it is immense, and they have a lot of their students have gone to great heights. I was watching a football game the other night, and I realized that Harrison Butker is the kicker for the team that won the Super Bowl this year, and he went to Westminster. I bet now that's just
Oh
one
wow.
example, but some have gone
Yeah.
scholar wise and done
Yeah.
amazing things, and it grew
Yeah.
very big, very big.
Did you go to any of your high school reunions over the
Yeah,
decades and reconnect
I
with people
did.
there?
I did. We stayed close. Uh, my friends my age and the boyfriends my age, we all kept in touch. Throughout the years. And one wonderful thing happened to me at school. They had a queen. Let's see, they had a homecoming queen, and then she had her court and all that. But the team wanted. It's going to get me crying. The team wanted me to be their mascot. And I didn't
Hmm.
know they were going to do this. And so in the middle of assembly one time, and they were all winking at me when we went into assembly. And I thought, what is going on? What is this? Hey, Deenie, you know. Well, they just carried on. They picked me up and threw me around, and it was just wonderful. And that was the kind of camaraderie we had. And there's still a group in Atlanta that I stay close to. We had the girls, after we graduated, and all kept a bridge club. And I was in that for quite a while
Hmm.
until I moved to Cartersville. And recently they asked me if I would learn to play bridge again and come down every week and play with them. But I can't do that right now. But we stay tight, so it still was wonderful. We had I guess because Westminster was small, we had a really fun group, and it was special.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So before we jump into you moving from Atlanta to Cartersville and kind of the next stage of your life, when
Mhm.
you just look at these first 2 decades of your life, how would you summarize it? What was the impact that your parents had on you, and how you saw them and the other mentors in your life, and how would you sort of tie a bow around those first few decades of your life?
You made me do that by asking me to do this. I've thought about it a lot. My mother and daddy are gone now, and So they've been gone for a while. So I miss them every day. I, I was very fortunate. I think they loved me a whole lot. I was basically an only child, and then I got married early. So um, I don't know if, excuse me, if there'd been more children, if there would have been a different atmosphere. But I know they really cared about me, and that was. I know there are families where that doesn't happen, and
Yeah.
there's conflict, and I'm very grateful for that. I think that's a big thing. When I went through this deal of looking at my whole life to talk about today, I thought, gosh, I've been so blessed because now you do see the news about people who are hurting. You do know it. You're not in the bubble. You can't be. And I was not. I was really, and Daddy he was very respectful of me and my mind. He had me on his board of directors um,
Mm.
after a while, and he said one thing to me that has stuck with me forever. He just casually said this to me coming out of a board meeting one day. He said, "You always ask the questions nobody else does,"
Yeah.
and that was just life changing for me to carry that around. And as I
Mm-hmm.
told you, I thought, it's also the reverse. If there was something bad said, we carry that around too. And I thought, boy, just a
Mm-hmm.
few words can just impact you like crazy. But that's the way he was. I don't remember him being mad at me but twice. And once was when
Yeah.
he thought I said a dirty cuss word. And I don't even remember the other one. But anyway, and mother was uh, always his sidekick. She was his sidekick. And I remember they would, you know, come into the living room at night after he got home from work and have a cocktail together and talk about the day. And he would always share a lot about work with her. And she had a great brain
Yeah.
and wanted to, he wanted her to, give her an input. So we had
Yeah.
that kind of family, and it was good. Yeah, we did. Oh, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
one big part of our family was athletics. We were all athletic, and Daddy at 87 was mad because he couldn't get up on water skis, and he
Was
did.
this Lake Lanier or Lake
Yeah,
Alatina?
it was probably Lanier. No, I know it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was down where my brother lived at the time on Lake Martin. That's what it was.
Okay, Lake Martin.
But he,
Okay.
he always was very athletic. Mother was very athletic, and I followed in that. But so we did a
Okay.
lot of outdoor sports. We wanted to be on the go all the time. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't do a lot of sitting around. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump forward. You moved to Cartersville. It's what year is that? Do you have a decade are we in when that
89.
happens? You get a ranch.
Mm-hmm. It was 1989. Um, and all right, so let me see here. We jumped some places here. Yeah, let me get to that. Yeah, here we are. Okay. Um, when I went to Cartersville, a lot had happened in my life, and I just felt strong about it. But one of the things about me was that I I had never sat down and said, well, I want to be this, and I'm going to make a beeline for it. I'm going to study to do it. And blah, blah. Because when I went to Georgia, which I went to Georgia, the choices of a career were a secretary, a teacher, a nurse, or a homemaker.
Mm.
And I didn't really feel good about any of them because later in life, when I realized that I'm just a leader and an organizer and a visionary. And so nothing really fit. And so I had to just decide I'd be a
Yeah.
homemaker.
Well, so
And
what year did you go to UGA right after high school or did you wait?
I was there in 56. Yeah, 55,
Okay.
56. But,
Okay. And
but
was
yeah,
it like Georgia Tech where there wasn't as many women there?
No, it was total. It was equal, and we had
Oh, okay.
guys and us, and yeah, and
Okay.
I I was asked by I guess my sorority, I can't remember now, but I was asked to run for the council, the student council, and you have to go out and do all like they do now. You put up signs and all this stuff. I was against the coach's daughter, and his name was Wally Butts, and her thing was
Mm.
you can't beat our butts. And I was out, and I was, don't be a meanie, vote for Deenie. I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, she won. But I enjoyed Georgia, but I did not, I didn't stay all 4 years because I got married, but um, I had decided to do the homemaker thing, and that didn't work out. I mean, I had to be
And
home.
did you want to do that, or was that something that like how
No,
much cultural pressure was there for that type of thing at the time?
well, I mean, girls back then, you got married. I mean, that was
Yeah.
it. You didn't think about a career. You thought, well, I could teach school till I get married, or be a secretary till I get married. It was not like, well, I really
Mm.
want to be a teacher. I really want to be a secretary. Nothing wrong with those jobs. They just didn't fit me. But so I just felt like, well, maybe I need to learn how to cook because I didn't know how to cook at all.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to sew or any of that stuff. And took the sewing class, and I stitched the thing I was making to the thing I was wearing, and
Yeah.
that was about as good as I got. So Georgia was fun. The only thing I regret is that we didn't go out for cheerleading. Mother was worried that I would. I don't know what she was worried about, but she talked me out of going out for cheerleading, and I really wish I'd done that because I loved doing it.
Yeah.
It's fun. But
Yeah.
I met some great people there, and I still have friends from there, and it was good. But it was 5,000 people all day,
Yeah.
not 20
Wow.
or 30 like today. I mean, it was
So
safe.
what was did yeah. Oh, okay. What was your like did you have any kind of vocational vision or inclination? Tell us about that or leadership, being a
No,
leader?
I didn't. I was a leader in high school, but it was because I I felt strong about something. I wanted to see team spirit, so I was involved in that and was president of the pep club. Or I would feel like I wanted to. We had a May Day at Westminster, and I wanted to help organize that. So I was head of all the costumes in May Day. I mean, it was just like, and then I was in uh, I can't remember what you called it, but I was oh shoot, I made good grades. Let me say that I made good grades.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Was that because of your own work ethic, or did your parents kind of encourage
I
you to
just
get good
felt like
grades?
I always felt like there was a right and a wrong, and sometimes I got that mixed up. But I felt like I was supposed to get my homework in. I was supposed to pay attention. I wish I remembered all that stuff now, but I did make good grades, and but I just there were times when I just felt like I wanted to help some way. So I started way back then doing that, and then I did it at Georgia, and they asked me in the sorority to do some things, head up some stuff, and so it was not like, oh well, I need to be a leader, I need to lead this, or it was like, oh well, this opportunity's here, and it might do some good or something, and I need to. I could organize that. Yeah, I'll help. I'll do that, and that's sort of
Okay.
the way it went. Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell us about like being a woman then in terms of how like the roadblocks and the negativity. Did you face much of that? Do you remember the women's rights movement at all?
I remember it, but I remember personal more. I think that, like I say, in Georgia, um, I didn't see ways to have a lot of different careers, and nothing was presented like that. It was those things, and then you just mostly got married. But one of the, I guess that was my feeling, was that what I began to learn about myself was that I enjoyed making things work that I thought would help. If I saw something that could be done better, or if there wasn't a something, and I had a vision of, well, gosh, if we did this, then, maybe we would be able to get that and help other people. One of the things that I felt was that I was a leader, and my feeling was that there were times when I had an idea about doing something, and it wasn't accepted. And so there were times when I felt I was rejected because my idea was. And a lot of times that was really hard, because I felt passionate and strong about something and felt like it would really be a good thing to do and could help a lot of people. And that was disappointing. Or there were times when, in some ways, it was hurtful, because maybe someone said to me, "You're not good enough," or "We don't need you," kind of thing. I think we all face that at some point, maybe. But there were a lot of times that I knew that I had helped, and I was doing something that mattered. And I think that's part of what life is about. But it isn't always easy, and I think that that's a place where I felt God had paths for me, and He wanted me to use what I had, what He'd given me as a talent in leadership and organizational things, and He would put things in my path, and I felt like, well, gosh, I need to do this. I need to do it no matter what the obstacles are, or roadblocks. And so that's kind of how I ran my life. Now, sometimes I didn't hear God very good, and He had to scream at me, but that is something I believe in very, very strongly. I felt God had paths He wanted me to get on, and that He had given me the tools to do it and the talents to do it. And, I really tried to stay with it if I could, even though things could get hard. I don't mean in any way, in any of this story, to say that, yay, look at me. It was hard a lot of times to do things. But I just lived my life feeling there is a God, and He is, He did make us all. He did make the earth, and He has plans for us, and a lot of them make the world better. And I just wanted to do whatever that was that He put me here to do. And like I was just ending up saying, there were times I missed the signal. And He said, "Deenie," I said, or don't, or back up, or, don't do, or whatever. I don't mean for it to sound like it was, oh, God told me to do this, so I'll go do it. No, that didn't work for me. It was, oh, you really want me to do this? Are you sure? Anyway, so like with my horse trainer, when he would say, "You need to go down that hill, lickety split," and I said, "Oh no, are you sure I can do this?" "Yes, I'm sure you can do it." So go. Yeah. And I would go down screaming, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." So, so one place that I went in my 50s, early 50s, a lot had happened in my life then, and I went on a pontoon boat down the Grand Canyon for 2 weeks. And my pontoon mates were 17 guys and 2 women. One woman was a librarian from somewhere, and the other woman had gotten married the night before on the side of the canyon. And the other guys were everything from UCLA to Maine. And we just had the time of our lives. It was amazing. And one of the things that happened then was we would, excuse me, let me get water. We would get out of the boat at lunch and dock, not dock, but pull it up on the edge thing, and
Yeah.
just kind of walk around. Well, they all were going up the side of the cliff, up the canyon, straight up, and go to an inside water pool and swim. They can't
Yeah.
get up the side of the hill. So I'm scared of heights, and I mean, really, really. So I remember Joe. Joe said, "Deenie, if you go up, I'll walk you up. I'll go with you." Well, I didn't know there was a tiny little ledge, like big enough for my foot, that I had to stay on for I don't even know how long, across where there was a drop. I mean, the whole thing was a drop off the side of the mountain while I was going across, and I froze. And I couldn't move my foot. And he said, "I'm gonna talk you across," and he talked me across that whole thing, and I got to go in with
Wow.
everybody. And I thought, okay, that was cool, because he got my attention away from what was scaring me.
Mm.
And I got to go in because I had to go back the same way. But anyway, I never
Yeah.
forgot him. He was amazing. And one of the guys also, after we got back from the trip, I got a letter from one of the guys, and he said, "I'm so sorry I haven't written you. I wanted to write you sooner, but I've been on an aircraft carrier in Desert Storm."
Wow. Wow.
I mean, you never know. You never know what other people are. I never heard him say anything about doing that,
Yeah.
on the trip, or what. I didn't even know he would. Yeah. So
That he went. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it
So
was
did you did you move to Cartersville after or before the Grand Canyon trip?
I went before. I had just moved to Cartersville, and actually, someone here in Cartersville had gone on the trip and told me about it, and she said, "I think it would be really good for you to go," and it was, because it really put my feet back under me after a lot of tough stuff.
Like a way to reset your life in a way? Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
it really did.
So in 1990, you said you were 54. Is that what you said? 53.
Let's see. I was.
Are they right?
Born in 37, so 53, probably 53. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like your midlife crisis moment.
So. Yeah.
Did you buy a sports car by chance?
Actually, I did get a convertible. But you know what's funny? I had to really work to decide I deserved the convertible. It's funny. I don't want to ever look like I'm showing off, but a leader is at the front of the pack sometimes, and I didn't want to ever let that leadership indicate that I felt, "You see me," I really didn't, and so it was kind of challenging to be, in that place, and so I didn't want people. I wanted to enjoy the convertible, but I didn't want it to be like show offy. So it took me a long time to buy it. Now I would be without, because I just loved it. The air blowing in your hair and stuff. But that was something that I struggled with, and still do a lot.
So what would you tell the person that they do feel diminished, their self-worth has been broken down, and they're in a low spot? What would you say to them to encourage them right now, if they happen to be listening and watching this?
I don't think anybody God made is a mistake or a bad thing. I mean, God put us here, all of us here. And I think it's tragic when there are things said to somebody that are negative. You're not good enough. You're stupid. You're an idiot, whatever. I'm reading Henry Winkler's book right now, and he was dyslexic. And he went through hell, because he didn't know it. Nobody knew it then. And he was amazing. He is amazing. But he was never diagnosed, and he was told all these bad things and just felt horrible inside. And it makes me cry because there's so many people that are abused or hurt in small or large ways. And I think the way you come out of it is well, for me, I think you know that God is there, and he's big, and he's powerful, and he sent Jesus to show us who he is. kindness and
Yeah.
goodness but rules that help us not to get run over by the semi coming down the road. And I think if we
Yeah.
can turn back to that and know that he loved us and still does, no matter what's happened to us, no matter what we've done, and that he's there, and that we are made of good stuff, and find somebody that will talk to you good instead of in a bad way. I had that. I had
Yeah.
some really good, special people in my
Mm.
life that.
And do you feel like those people that spoke life into you, did you seek them out, or did God bring them to you, or was it a combination of the two?
Little of both. Little of both.
Yeah.
You and I both worked with Laurie Johnson
Yeah.
for many years before she unfortunately died. She was a counselor, and she was a person who never would tell you what to do or how to do it or when to do it. She said, "You have it in you. You're inside." I used to call it "I know in my knower." Um, but she said, "You do. You know, you might not understand it up here or in your heart, but somewhere in your spirit, is the right thing to do or say or act on." And so she
Yeah.
would talk to me and bring that out and let me tell. And one of the things she did was listen. She just she let me tell all my crazy thoughts, and then she would. There were times when she could correct an assumption I had wrong, which we do a
Hmm.
lot. Assume things, or my
Yeah.
expectations were too high, and that's why it hurt because it didn't happen. But I had expected something different. So different ways that she helped bring that out, and she was a big part of my life for a long time, and yours too.
Yeah.
The three of
Yeah.
us
And she
were
was,
the,
and we'll talk. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And we both knew each other, and through McKeever's Ride, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
yes.
How long did you end up knowing Lori, in total?
Gosh, well, she died 3 years ago, and um, I met her in probably 1990s. So what's that? 20 years, 30 years?
Yeah. About
Yeah.
30 years.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so I probably met her, um, 2009 or so, or 2010, and knew her
Hmm.
until she passed away, of cancer, unfortunately,
Yes.
at an early age. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about maybe that connection, as well as just you're on this interesting, you live in an interesting place. You have horses and donkeys and a golden doodle, and you've had lots of golden retrievers. You are an outdoor person. You love animals, but you didn't have them growing up, and you have a
No.
family, and they come and visit. And tell us about what you got
Okay.
there.
Well, all right. So this is very interesting. So when I had, well, let me back up. I have two wonderful daughters and an incredibly fantastic son-in-law that's married to Dee, my older daughter. Dana is my second daughter, and a couple of years ago, Dee and Mark moved to Cartersville, and that's just been really special. But Dana was in Louisiana for many years, and she had three children, and she moved to Blue Ridge for a while, and now she's getting ready to go back to Louisiana. And Dee and Mark had two sons. So we've had five boys, grandchildren, and now one of the oldest grandson, Dee and Mark's son, Si, has just had a baby boy. So we have a
So you're a
eight.
great grandma. Great
I
grandma.
am. Am. And so all of them would come to the ranch for different reasons. The boys in Louisiana would come up, and they were, Dana had two, but she had an older son, and then she had two younger ones. And they would come up and put hay out for the horses and ride in the gator, and, we just had a ball. And then
Yeah.
Si and Jay lived closer, so I got to see them a little bit more. And we did. Well, I guess I've just done every guy thing there is to do with boys. And one of the most fun things was when I assigned Jay to play my birthday party.
Which birthday?
I don't remember, but they must have
Okay.
been about 10 and 8 or something. So that was
Okay.
30 some. I was probably in my 50s. I was in my 50s. I'll say I was in my 50s.
Okay. Yeah.
And they took me to what I would call a plastic maroon boot camp. And
Okay.
we had all these. You had to crawl through tunnels, and then you had this slick plastic wall, and you were supposed. You've seen the Marines climb up that thing. Well, if you've
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
on your feet and you've got this slick plastic wall, trying to get up and over, and I did it. I tried to do it multiple times. I said, guys, I can't do it. I think I'll be able to turn around and go back. Well, I turned around. All the munchkins, all the other kids who have been there for birthdays, who are a lot younger than I am, are in the tunnel. I can't go back. I got to get up. So they just pushed me until I got up and over into the balls on the other side of the wall. But anyway, it was so much fun. And that's the kind of thing we did. We just did crazy fun things together, and have ever since. But the girls growing up, we just, it was real special. They're different types, and that made for a lot of fun and interest in the house. And I've always loved Dee's husband, Mark, and he's just, fit right in. And actually up here at the branch, both of them have been able to help me, and Dana has too, here, with things that need to be done or whatever. Dee's storing, boarding her horse here with me. No charge though.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I didn't have any animals growing up. Mother and Daddy just didn't care for animals, and they just plain didn't want them. And so I didn't get the pony I asked for at 10. So I got one.
You had to wait till you were 60.
I was 60 when I got my first horse. And that was because of Laurie. Laurie was a wonderful horsewoman. And she encouraged me. She said, you've moved up here and you've got a lot of grass. That's all you need. And so...
so you didn't have a barn then? You must have built the barn after that, right?
I built it. Yeah, I built it, not knowing what to do, but it's wonderful. And I ended up getting 2 horses, and then I wasn't a real great rider. I just rode at camp and fell off and got back on, and I never cantered across the fields beautifully. I just loved horses, and something felt right being around them. And so when I came to Cartersville, I'm in the woods. I was until they built a road in front of my house, but I really just knew that I felt better outside. And I just really do. I still do. I feel it's just...
What does it do for you? What does it give you?
It's like a sanctuary. It just wraps its arms around me. It's like I feel peaceful. I feel close to God out. I have walking paths around in my gardens where they're called prayer paths. And I don't know, it's like you see the creation. I'm seeing it in the trees and the flowers and the birds and the animals, and it's beautiful. So yeah, that changed my life.
Yeah,
getting all the animals and put me into a whole lot of other worlds. Yeah. Well, let me just add one more thing. I talked about my brother earlier. He's 10 years younger than I am. Well, he had 4 boys. So we had 9 boys between us, and so Christmas and anything else, they were all lined up at the counter. When I built my house, I built a counter long enough to hold all those boys. So that was another thing and it still goes on. I love those kids, and they're all not kids anymore. Some are married and have wonderful wives and children.
I mean, what is it like to look across your family and see them all and to see?
There's a story behind everything I do, I think. But so I started having Christmases here. So I've had them for 30 years, and over 30 years now. And one time I decided I was going to get these little, I think you call them like they snap open. They're little poppers. And you open it up, and there's this little paper thin hat. everybody put their hat on. I thought, this is so cute and fun. We're just going to do this every year. So the next year, I got antler ears. And every year, I get something new. So this is a picture of one of the years. And let me get it wet. There we are. Can you see the ear? I think these are the Kiss Me mistletoe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But everybody's got ears. We've got the dogs. We've got old, young, husbands, wives, children, all the mess of it. That's not the whole family. We unfortunately here somebody is can't get here or whatever. But
what's it like to look like in terms of your own legacy and life, to look across your family and and to see that? Because I think I think it's important for a lot of reasons, but one thing that comes to mind is, people are having less kids, they're having smaller families, and in some ways they're not having what you're seeing. And I think it would be great to just encourage that, like show them that picture of what it could be and encourage them towards that, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. As I said, I was really young when I got married, and so I had Dee when I was 20, and I didn't know what to do. I had never babysat. I had never done any real child stuff, and we moved to New Orleans when I was 8 months pregnant. So, and I had no one really to teach me or anything, and we didn't have any teaching back then. Dr. Spock's book, was all that we did, and unfortunately we found out a lot of that wasn't good advice. So I wanted to enjoy her. Gosh, she was the cutest thing ever. And Dana too, when she came. I was better with Dana because I'd already practiced on 4OD. But to have them in my life has just been the best thing ever. There are certainly times when they want to kill me, and then I want to knock their heads in or whatever. But we did have had a wonderful life, and as we're older now, and then they have children, they understand a lot more about that, and it's been just it's been a very empty life for me to not be able to give that love and to receive it. So the new great-grandson is 8 months old, and we call him the golden boy because he's just golden. And so, now look at that. Now, how can you not want that? Isn't that wonderful? Look at that face looking at me. It's breathtaking. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And my girls were that way. And when Mark and Dee started dating, I felt so strong about it because he was not that young then, but he was precious to me. And Dana and her boys and Si and Jay, and then Si married Brittany to adore, and it just, the circle's gotten bigger and bigger, and that's why we have Precious Bray, and here are the parents, and at Christmas, and little Bray's there.
Yeah.
And so, it's and Si and Brittany are older, and they waited, a while to have children, and they're beside themselves. They're having a wonderful time. They're moving out because it's a non-stop job. But it's just a joy. And I think nowadays, you ask me about being a woman differently, having children's different because there's so many helps now. And there's so much information. You Google it and find out what to do. And aids like that. But it's been wonderful. And one of the reasons I love this place is that I built it for them to be coming up here. And I love it when they are here. It's magic here. Yeah.
Well, do you want to flip the script and talk about your mom and showing her around Atlanta and her the end of her story? Yeah. So you're the daughter in that case. You're the other side of the coin.
Yes, and I'll tell you, I would encourage everybody out there to get a record of your family. Get them to tell you about stuff. I wish I'd known what to ask my grandmother more. And I wish I'd
Mm.
Probably more things to ask Mother. But I did do one really cool thing. We got in the car and I took her to everywhere she lived in Atlanta or where anything was important to her in Atlanta. And back then, I did it on a cassette. We had recorded her talking. So I have
Yeah.
her voice telling me the stories. And she grew up on Ponce de Leon. If y'all know that, it's down the middle of
Oh,
town.
wow. Yeah.
And they lived up on the top of a hill. And I didn't think they had very much money, but I'm not sure about that because Mother went to the private school, Washington Seminary, but it really wasn't. I don't know. She went to Girls High for a long time, but she didn't have enough money to go to college, and that was really hard for her. She was really good tennis player, and she could beat the girl who won the state championship. And the other girl went to college and she didn't. And that was one of the differences of women back then too, was not a lot of women played sports. They didn't have the openness that
Mm.
we do now. And I think that hurt Mother.
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah. But
mm,
she grew up in Ponce and she had two sisters. And um, down Ponce de Leon, there's a big church. And they went to church there. I think it was a pretty famous church. There was a pastor there that I think was famous at one time. But anyway, they would go to church, and then they would go further down Ponce de Leon to her grandmother's. And she said they would sit on the front porch and watch the streetcar go by. And that grandmother would give them little brown bags with cookies in them. And that was one of her memories of, time with back then. So we went around to all these places where a lot of the buildings were still there, and she would tell me what had happened in the buildings and what mattered to
wow.
her. Mother was smart, very smart, and as I said, a good athlete. She ended up being a crack golfer and won all the championships at her club and everything. And I think she could have really done something with those two talents had it been a different world. Opened more to her.
Yeah.
Um, she she thrived on being outside and being active. She was president of her
Hmm.
golf associations and garden clubs and stuff. And she
Yeah.
asked me a lot of times to tell some of my adventures to them. She took a pride in that and thought they were fun, and all her friends did. So we connected on that. After she lost Daddy, I think that was really hard for her. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, but
So your dad died in 1998, and then she passed away in 2006.
yeah. So she had a pretty good time without him. And, but
Yeah. What was kind of, you look at your mom and you're to tell someone, this is who my mom was and this is the story she lived, how would you describe that?
I think there were some things I didn't know about her. I think uh, sometimes I felt that things weren't as easy for her. That
Hmm.
she told me a story that she was actually thrown away when she was born. That she was blue, and they put her in the trash can. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine that.
Wow.
And I don't know. I mean, no psychiatrist. I don't know. If that had something to do with anything or what that was just whatever. But anyway, she survived that. But I always felt she is as much as she was president, I don't know that she always felt wonderful about herself. And I'm probably saying that from being as old as I am now and looking back, but not while I was in it.
Yeah.
Um, but she was a good mother and she was a good wife, and again she excelled and had lots of friends in those organizations and things.
Yeah.
Before she had a 10-year-old, she was still raising a 10-year-old when I was out of the house and gone too. So
Mm,
she, had that going on, and she had a good
yeah.
relationship with my brother. So yeah,
Now you mentioned tennis. So is that a point of connection that you both had with each other, was tennis? And you want to talk about, founding Alta Tennis?
yeah. She didn't talk about tennis very much, so it was, I don't even remember when she told me that story that I told you, because she was so involved in golf. But
Oh, okay.
tennis was not a sport that was out there for girls very much. And so I didn't start playing tennis till I was in my 30s. And,
Okay. So this
you
was
know,
the 60s that you started playing?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
So back then, we just played if we had a club or a neighborhood court. There weren't many of either in Atlanta back then. There
Okay.
were just 3 or 4
Yeah.
country clubs, and then there were, I guess, a few park courts. But men played tennis, but women didn't play too much.
Yeah.
But I decided to play, and some of my friends, we all decided to start tennis, and we did. And I had never played doubles when I decided I would get into this little round robin at the club. I didn't even know what a round robin was. I didn't even know doubles. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, there's a point to this. So I got out on the, I had to pull somebody's name out of the hat. Well, I pulled the champion tennis player at the club out of the hat. So Charlie was about 6'5", and he said, just serve and get out of the way. So that's what I did, and I stood back there and watched him hit this ball like crazy. So anyway, Charlie and I got to be good friends, Charlie Cox, and he went in as president of what was this small organization, Atlanta Tennis, and he came over to my house one night. I opened the door, and he looked down at me and he said, "I've got this idea about playing teams, league play between the country club, between all the clubs." And
Yeah.
I think it'll be a lot of fun. Would you help me organize that? Well, that was Alta Tennis, 85,000 members later. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And so I said, sure. And so we started working on it. His wife, Ann, was my tennis partner. And so she got in it, and we pulled a couple of other people in, and we started doing, well, it was from rock bottom because there'd never been anything like it. And so we had to figure
Yeah.
out everything, and so we did. But one funny story is we wanted people to know about it and get them involved and help see if they could do it at their club and all. So we decided to have a meeting. Well, he sent letters out to everybody he could think of that might play tennis or to the clubs. So we had a meeting. We had it at a motel in Atlanta. We went over there and we said, should we put out 100 chairs? We don't want to look empty. How many people are me? Well, we had probably hundreds. I don't even know how many. They were crawling all over the windowsills. People really wanted to do it. And so we started.
Yeah.
We started. And we ended up having a little newsletter and golly day. And well, anyway, we got organized, and it was really going well. And then the World Championship tennis tournament, which was at that time the highest tennis in the world.
Okay.
All the top
Yeah.
players came to Charlie and myself and said, would you all run this tournament? Well, we had 3 months to organize it. And this meant everything. This meant deciding tickets. How many tickets are you going to sell to make a profit? How many sessions are you going to have? How many? Ball boys, referees, dealing with the players, getting them places to stay. Yeah. So we went to the Braves and we said, we need help on tickets, and we need to understand some of these things. And I'll never forget this guy. Won't name names. He turned up and said, you can't do this. There is no way you can do this. Basically you're going to fail, and there's no way you're going to do it in 3 months. So just don't, basically. Well, guess what? We outsold the world. And
wow.
with the biggest tournament out of all the tournaments all over the world that year. And we were invited out to Mr. Hunt was owned this whole thing, and he invited us out to his place out west, and I met I mean, we had all the top players here. We had Rob Laver and Stan Smith and that whole group, and Arthur Ashe, you know, you name it. And
Yeah.
it was astounding. I'll tell you one funny story. So I had lined up people to house the players, and I had this one girl that was from her. She had a connection to Georgia, Russia. And this player comes in from
Wow.
Georgia, Russia. So he comes in, comes to the desk. I said, "Oh, I've got the best place for you to stay. This is wonderful." Like, blah, blah, blah. He said, "Oh, no, I stay hotel." I'm telling you. He said, "No, I stay hotel." Okay, all right. So I called her and I said, "He's not coming." Which, you know, okay. So the next day he comes up to me. "I hear about Lady. She has food for me. And I told you." So I called her up and I said, "He's coming." She said, "We had a party last night. We ate all the food I baked." I said, "Do it again." But it was so much fun because we got to know him personally. And that,
Yeah.
to me, that and the Olympics were when I believed people could understand the difference. We were talking about in the beginning of the program. The difference in people who didn't look like us or talk like us or think like us. And I think that is where world peace comes from. I really believe that. We had camaraderie, you know, no matter the difference.
Yeah.
We all laughed and figured it out. Yeah.
So how long were you involved in tennis? And, you know, whenever I went to your, you know, been to your house, you have that newspaper thing on the wall of you playing tennis. Is that related to that event or is that separate?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, I played a long time. I actually got pretty good. And, but I
Yeah.
played until the Atlanta Olympics came and I got involved in that. Yeah, that
Well,
was,
so
I
let's talk
couldn't
about
believe
the
it.
96 Olympics. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's, you're volunteering. Man, 19, it's from what I can tell from the pieces of stories I've collected, Atlanta changed a lot because of the 1996 Olympics in a lot of positive ways. But
Yes.
tell us about the Olympics. Where's the best place to start there?
The best place is where I started. I didn't, I just heard about it and I don't remember what article I read in whatever, but I read about they were looking for volunteers. And I thought that sounds like fun. Well, this was five and a half years before '96. And so I didn't know what, you know, but I thought, well, you know, I think I'll go down and talk to him. So I went down and interviewed with this fella, and he asked me, you know, what you do, and I told him some of my adventures, some of my organizations, and some of my things I could do or not, and everything. He said, "Well, I need to put you before some other people, and let's talk to them, and blah blah blah." So we ended up saying, "Well, what would you like to do in the Olympics? Because we want you." And that was so
Yeah.
great. They actually, we had a small crew in the beginning. It was 5.5 years ahead. And he said basically I could work in any department because it was all departmentalized, you know, as far as each of the activities or what you did. So I ended up, and down the road, they offered me a job. They offered to pay me. And I said, "No, I want to stay a volunteer because I'm more flexible that way. I can, you
Yeah.
know, call my hours and do different things." So anyway, I went to every department except TV, and that was nailed down somewhere else. But I loved it. I got the opportunity to meet amazing people and to have amazing adventures. The one of the funniest, not funny ones, was it was we were 3 years into it, and I was doing. I ended up choosing press. I wanted to be in with the press because I figured they're going to be coming in to do press reports after their things, and I'll get to see a lot of the activities instead of being in one particular place. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we were going to have this giant International Olympic Committee, huge conference in Atlanta. It was 3 years out. All the kings and queens from the different countries, all the people, I mean, just huge
Wow.
athletes,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So they're coming to Atlanta, and we had this hotel down there on the Peachtree Street, where they have several hotels, and it was threatening to be snowy, and so that would have been the snow of whatever that year was. I can't remember now.
That was the first snowpocalypse. Is that what you're saying?
It was like, it would have been 90 or 91, because it was, about 3 or 4 years before 96. So anyway, I thought, I am not going to be able to get to Cartersville. I better get a hotel room. So I got a hotel room in the hotel down the road, and down the block. And so the day of the event, I was trying to get to the second hotel, walked down into the lobby, opened the door, and I've never seen Atlanta like this. The streets were empty. There was no one on the streets. Wow. There was a canyon between the buildings on this side of the road and this on this, and the wind was going through it like a tunnel, So I had my umbrella. Well, I'm like Mary Poppins. All of a sudden, I am flying down Peachtree Street, like, my feet were off the ground, and I'm squealing like a pig, and they were filming me from the TV station. WAGA was filming me. I didn't realize it till I landed. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to, help the Olympics out here. And, through snow, sleet, whatever, we are going to be working on this." So anyway, there were not but about 40 of us in the office at those times. That was about as many people as working on the thing at that time. So we was a small, tight group. And we had bagged lunches, and meet together, and we'd have a lot of fun, but also talk about what we were doing. Well, they got the tape from WGA. I was a star of the lunch, and it was hysterical. I mean, and then every year after that, they have a weather bad thing, they show that tape, and it's me squealing, anyway. But the seriousness of it was that all these people are coming in, and we got to get them at the airport. We've got to get them in. We couldn't get people. All my volunteers were out in, Sandy Springs and Buckhead and all the parts around. They couldn't get into the hotel to come help us. So we had this skeleton crew down there that were the only ones there, and we had to do everything. So we had to, the ones that could fly in and got there, we had to register them. We had all this, security and all these things going on, and we had to do it all on our own. And it was crazy, but it was such a good, it was a picture of how you can do things if you work together. Yeah. We were working together. Nobody was pulling apart or saying I can't do it or that's not my job, But one, you just
made it. You figured it out and made it happen.
Mm-hmm. One humorous thing happened to me was that we did have security, and there was a policeman that was kindly offered to take me back to the hotel that night, because we had worked till midnight. And I said, "Oh, it's great. That's great. Thank you. It's snowy and slippery and everything." He got out there. He hadn't allowed the shoes on. He was sliding. I was holding him up. Anyway. So, it's always something funny in there. We got to find the funny stuff in the craziness of the world.
So how do you end up auditioning for the closing ceremonies?
Oh, gosh, that was also really funny. So a lot of my volunteer friends, we all got together when they were asking for acts to come on for the, be in the closing ceremonies, opening or closing. And so a lot of my buddies said, "You know what? We all take aerobics. Let's do a thing. Let's get a little aerobic thing, and we'll just get our little shorts and tennis shoes, and we're going to get our little thing together." So we did. And at lunch, we would practice, and the whole Olympic group would just cheering us on, here with the girls, we're going to do our little thing. We didn't know that the closing ceremonies was going to have acts from all over the world. professional acts coming in with costumes. And what were we thinking? In fact, one of the girls said, I thought we could just go out there maybe with a Southern umbrella and just walk around like Southern Bells or something. So we got down to where we had to perform, and that's when we were like, oh dear God, we're going against professionals. We look like idiots. We got out there and everybody was cheering for us, and we got on. And so we did get to perform, but we were practicing after work till 2 a.m. And we ended up, out of 12 of us, I think 2 ended up actually being in the team that did it, and I was one of them. I was so happy I did it. It was phenomenal. When we were in the underground of the stadium the night we performed, and Celine Dion and I don't know, everybody was under there with us. And I thought, when I go out that tunnel, I'm either going to throw up or I'm going to be seriously happy. And I was so happy. Oh my gosh. And my sweet daddy, mother wasn't able to because of health, but daddy rode the MARTA down. He was in his, trying to think, he was 70 or something, maybe older. Rode the MARTA down there and sat through the whole thing. And, it was astounding. It was absolutely astounding. And then at the end, all the athletes flooded the stadium floor, and we were able to just jump around, and I could hug all the people I'd worked with all those years. And it was, the Olympics and carrying the torch and all of those different things, it was like America. It was like our America. This is what we're about. This is who we are. And I'm sorry, I feel like that's a lot's gone now. But that time to do that, everybody was so positive. It was, we're going to do this together and we're going to make it be wonderful. And people all over Atlanta were housing people that were different and having a ball. And it was, that's what I think could happen, and did. And I hope it comes true.
Well, tell us more about the torch burn, because you carried the Olympic torch through Cartersville. Tell us how that happened and how you made the news doing that.
Wow. That was just amazing, because they really selected people who've done so many wonderful things all over the world to carry it. And Coca-Cola had a community hero, don't make me cry, community hero kind of thing. And people nominated people. And I got nominated. And I got chosen. And, sorry, I didn't know I was going to do this. And so I was, the torch team mapped out different, wherever you went. And so they mapped me out for Cartersville. And I had this great route. And the kids were little. The grandchildren were, I don't know, how old would they have been? Maybe 10.
96.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they got made T-shirts that said, "Run, Mama, run." And they were up on the hill, and I could see them and everything when I went by. But Cartersville was just packed. I mean, it was just a billion people. And I ran down the street, and I ended up at the Frank Moore building, which is the court building. Not the old one, but I went by the old one and went to that one. And they had a speech thing then. They had a program. And Mother and Daddy was sitting right in front of me, and they were both crying, and everybody was crying because it was just so emotional. It was so emotional. And the torch team had told me, said, "Don't run, milk it. Just walk and just take every minute you can to enjoy this." And, sorry. So anyway, I stood and held the torch while they were doing this program. And every time they would say, "Hold the torch," I'd go, "Hold the torch," and everybody scream and yell and everything. It was magic. It was just, it was one of the best moments of my life, and I felt very humble because there were so many people that ran it for different reasons, and it was
Yeah.
humbling. Yeah, very humbling. But I
Yeah.
kept to keep the torch, and I look at it and think about that. It was just
Yeah. And I've seen it. I've seen it. So,
it was
is it how? What was the length that you ended up carrying it? How long
um,
distance?
gosh, I don't know how to tell you exactly. Um, it would have been several blocks. I mean, I had to. There's a
Yeah.
bridge in Cartersville, and I started at the end of the bridge and had to go all the way down that road and then come back up another road. So I had a good stretch. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was that I just
Well,
wanted.
before, yeah, yeah. Well, before we dive into the next story of you getting involved in national politics, I do have one last question on the Olympics piece. Do you remember the bombing
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah.
and what was that like, and how did
Yeah,
that unfold?
yeah. I because I had chosen the press area. Um, the night of the bombing, um, I was I was called during the night, and so I just flew down there, and the security was so hard I could hardly get in, and it was we had bomb threats every day at the center at the work center when we had when we first started out we had a small telephone situation, then we got more and more, and I at one point I was training people to be on the telephone, and but we would get calls all the time about bomb threats and different things, and um, we just were so praying it wouldn't happen, and then it did, and it was just devastating. And but that team, Billy Payne was amazing. He was a wonderful leader, and the team that came to fix all that and to take care of it and to handle what was happening was just magnificent. They really were. They took charge, and I thought, well, the Olympics is over. Oh golly,
Yeah.
they'll shut it down. No, sir. We went right back out there and said, by golly, it's not going to get us down, and we did. And
Yeah.
people rallied, even though everybody was scared. We didn't know
Yeah.
what could happen. We didn't know who had done it, so we didn't know what was
What the
you know
motivations were and all that.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty
Yeah.
major. hmm Yeah, but everybody
So,
rallied.
yeah. So I know you want to talk about your mission trips. Were those in the 90s or were those later?
Oh, I did mission trips. Um, yeah, most of them were in the 90s. Um,
So you had
yeah.
Habitat for Humanity. It was at 90s as well, or
Oh gosh, Habitat. I probably did that earlier. I might have done that in the 80s. I did a lot. I built a lot of houses. I
okay.
hope they're still standing. I'm not sure how good I hammered, but with
So
that was.
tell us about how that came about and how did that connect?
I think that a friend of mine said something about she wanted to go do it. And I had a wonderful, fun tennis partner at the time named Denny. We were Denny and Deenie. Very cute. Um, but
Did you go to Denny's for breakfast?
no, we did not. But anyway, three of us went down. I guess was the first time I did it, and we put windows in. I mean, we did work. We really did.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I remember doing Habitat for Humanity once when I was a kid,
you
probably like a
too.
teenager or something. So
Now,
in Arizona. So
what did you do? Do you remember what you
there
did?
was a house being built, and it was like a Saturday where we were helping, I think,
Mhm.
paint, if I remember right, maybe painting some of
Yeah.
the walls or something. Yeah.
We built them from ground up, and
Yeah.
it was amazing. It was amazing. I remember though one time getting up on a scaffold and I was hammering. I didn't like hammering. And I was just doing the best I could. And this tall, big guy next to me, he must have been a hammerer. I mean, he knew how to hammer, and he
Yeah.
held it back as long as he could. And he said, I think I have a suggestion. It might be easier if you did it. Okay. But I loved it. I thought, it's something about being in the atmosphere of people who are trying to do something good. And there's no
Yeah.
negativity, and people are trying to help everybody get it done and done well. And
Yeah.
like that guy telling me how to do it in a nice way. And
Yeah.
it just is a good feeling. So I love doing that. So I did that. And then I've never been on a mission trip before. And the first one I went on was from a singles Sunday school class that was going. And I thought, well, that'll be neat. We had little Bible studies. And this was my little class of
Oh.
people in Jamaica. Can you see it? There it is.
Okay.
See me in the
Yeah.
middle? Talk
Okay.
about different. But they were precious, and they were the happiest people I ever saw to be as poor as they were. And they
Yeah.
loved us, and we loved them, and we built a church. We built a church for them. It had been blown down in a hurricane, and we built a church, and it was amazing. We were hauling cement,
Yeah.
rebar, and then we
Okay.
did Bible study with them. So I love that. And then I went on several others, but the other memorable one was the Flying Doctors, and I got called and to
What do
join.
you remember? What state you went? What reservation you went to? In what state?
I was trying to think about that the other day when I was making notes on this, and it was Arizona. And
Okay. Do you remember which reservation it was?
gosh,
Was it the Navajo Nation or the Hopi Nation or?
and that's
Because
bad.
the reason I ask is because from being from Arizona, you probably were at one of the reservations near where I lived.
Oh gosh, I
Yeah.
didn't think of that. I'll look it up for you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry people won't know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll look
But
it up.
anyways, flying doctors. Tell us about these flying doctors.
So I got called and I said, well, I'm not a nurse. I'm not I'm not, I don't know nurse stuff. But I thought, well, okay, I can line up people and pat them on the back and, get them ready to go to the doctor and everything. And the day before, the guy called me, the head guy called me and he said, well, you're going to work with this dentist. And I thought, and again, I thought, okay, well, I'm not the. So we were going to Mexico, and we went up in the Sierra Madres with the banditos and people who'd never seen a doctor or dentist ever in their lives and didn't speak English. So, and then I get in there and I'm finding out I'm the dentist assistant. I have to hold the
Yeah.
flashlight while he's doing surgery in somebody's mouth. All these people had never seen, and they weren't being told, well, this is what we're going to do to you. And, blah, blah, blah. They just open their mouth and the dentist would be pulling teeth out and everything else. And they were not crying or screaming or carrying on. And I wanted to tell them they were very brave. So I asked the interpreter, I said, tell me what to say. She said, I forget what it was, but some word about brains. And so I got that word and I was just doing it over and over. And then I thought, well, they don't know what I'm saying. What you say, so the head of the thing came in and he asked the dentist, he said, how y'all doing? He said, well, he said, Deenie is over here saying, bravo, Cadillac, convertible, whatever I could think of that would just be able to say, yay, you did so great. But that was, I wanted so much to tell them. They were just being so wonderful and good. It was hard not to be able to tell them and do that and to see them in the poverty is really tough. We don't
Yeah.
have a clue sometimes how much people
Yeah.
suffer and what they deal with. But boy, that was a trip. Yeah. But that was
Yeah.
also life-changing
So
to see all of that. Yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna flip across the century here to the 2000s, but we're at 2000. We're like 63 years into your life. So, is there anything else that you would sort of want to cap off in terms of kind of making sense of your first 63 years of life, and also most importantly, do you remember Y2K?
Hey, remember what?
Y2K.
Oh gosh, yeah, the country went crazy.
The end of the
Yeah.
apocalypse of the
Mhm.
2000.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was crazy. That was a little crazy. But yeah, it again did it. It was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we all ended up all right.
Mhm. Well, one of the biggest things for me was getting the horses. Laurie had encouraged me, to get the horse. I got one. I realized horses need a buddy, so I got two. But all I did was I thought, well, I'll just walk around and fly. I don't need to be
Yeah.
galloping across the plains, and it'll be okay. But I never felt I was close to the horses. I felt like there was a fence, and I just couldn't get that closeness. And then when I was 70, I met Ed Dabney, who is
Yeah.
turned out to be the greatest friend and horse trainer. But I met
Yeah,
him.
his business is he does gentle horsemanship, so it's very
Yes.
different than what people might think about when they think about horse training. Maybe give us a little, for those that don't understand how Ed Dabney approaches it, just give them like a little snippet of what that means.
Well, a lot of people treat horses like motorcycles, and you get on, you kick them, and you go, and you pull them back, and you stop. But they don't get the spirit of it unless you really look for it, and because it's there, and they want to give it to you. They want to commit to you. They want to be with you. But they are going to
Yeah.
look at you and decide if you're going to be the leader or not. It's one of you, because you and the horse are a herd. So one of you is going to be the
Yeah.
leader. And Ed is the most incredible teacher of that, and teaching you how to be a good leader, so that the horse feels trusting and safe with you. And so the night that I met him, he said about 2 or 3 sentences, and I thought, he knows this thing that connects you. So if I can have one
Yeah.
lesson with this guy, this would be just wonderful. Well, anyway, one lesson turned into thousands. And I've been friends and connected since 2008. And he
Hmm.
has taken me and others all over the world. We've been to Sicily and Sweden and Finland and, oh gosh, I mean, just everywhere. But the funniest thing is when I had that one first lesson that I thought was going to have, I turned into a 10-year-old that wanted the pony. And I was just beside
Yeah.
myself, and he knew it. So he said, after I'd ridden and done with it, he said, do you want to go to my other lessons and watch me? I said, yes, can I go, please? Can I go? Yay! So I did. And then he had sent an email out to everybody that he was connecting with when I got the lesson from him. And I said, you sent that email out. It said something about a camping trip in Wyoming. And I said, gosh, I'd really like to do that, but I'm 70 years old and I don't know how to ride real good and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, and I think it was in the fall. Yeah, it was like November, December. That's when it was. And he said, we've got till the summer. There's no problem. Of course you'll go. Well, I went 3 or 4 times to Wyoming, camping on the ground, riding in the mountains, just wonderful. And it just, I've just gone all over with him and gone to clinics with him and helped him work with the horses. He has done a lot of work with the police, and like in Sweden, we worked with the palace guards and got to see them march into
Wow.
the castle, and we were on the streets, we're yelling to our buddies that we had taught to ride the horses, and I don't know, it's just magic. But then he got asked to provide horses for movies. So my horses were in Sleepy Hollow for 3 years. And
Wow. The
one of
TV
my,
show.
yes,
Yeah.
TV show. One of my horses was a star. He was War, and Ed rode him, and it was incredible. I stories after stories for that. And then they've been in a lot of other TV shows, movies, just whole lot, both of them. And pulling carriages, which I drive a carriage now, and we taught my horses to pull a carriage, 2 of them at a time.
Yeah.
So I have wonderful stories.
Yeah, what did the gentle horsemanship teach you about yourself and
oh gosh.
and God and animals and life? What did you learn in that experience from those experiences?
Because when I first met Ed, his whole line is that I had 2 horses when he came to me, and neither one of them had ever had training. And he put Smoke into the arena with him, and then he taught Smoke to trust him and to come to him in 15 minutes. But what he did was he stood in the middle, and he was the safe place. And I always thought, okay, that's like God's the safe place. You can run around all you want to and act crazy and kick your legs up, but God is your safe place. So he's standing there as the trainer, as the safe place, and he's got a whip, but he's not whipping the horse. So he's cracking it and getting him to run. And if Smoke would turn his head to him, he would quit. So he's teaching him, okay, I want you to do that, and I'll be safe if you come do that. So Smoke was running like a crazy man, and then he would come in a little bit, and then he'd go back, and anyway, at 15 minutes, that horse melted like butter. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I cried like a baby.
Yeah.
He just went in and was loved on like he'd never been loved on. And it was, it's a picture of God. And that's the way Ed teaches is, you're the safe place, and you're the leader, and you're the comforter, but you got to decide to come to me. And that's what my horses did, and the way I hope I live, and the way Ed lives. And so, that was, Really, and there have been a million ways that I've watched him and learned from him in doing that. How do you act with the horse? You don't need to get mad at him. You need to teach him, and then have him trust you to do what you've asked him to do. And
cool. Well, let's talk about national politics. So, George Bush is the president. You could tell us about your 9/11 story. Where were you when that happened, and then how you ended up getting involved in the 2004 election. That was the first time I voted for president, and I did vote for George Bush. So tell us, give us the backstory there.
Well, actually, I think 9/11 affected all of us. As a matter of fact, Lori was at my house that day, and I think my daughter Dana called and said, you better turn the TV on. And of course, the world was just devastated. And I watched George Bush handle that, and I thought, wow, he is so strong in this. He's just so strong. And then the years after, I felt terrible that he was put down, and I'd never been in politics. I didn't pay too much attention to it. I mean, it was like, okay, we have a president, and okay. But I really watched him, and I just thought, boy, he's gone through stuff personally, and is strong before it, and he's a great leader. So in 2004, I called somebody that I knew was politically connected, and I said, look, this is what I've done. These are the things I can do, or want to do, or can. But I'll lick envelopes. I'll stuff envelopes. I'll do whatever I can do. But I'd like to help this guy get voted on again, to be president again.
Yeah.
Well, I got sent. Through multiple people. I got asked to go to an office with a group that was heading up Georgia. And so I worked on the grassroots for Georgia, and I would communicate with all the people there. And I kept thinking, gosh, I wish George Bush knew how many people in little towns and everywhere else are for him. And it's just so amazing. So I worked in that, and then 2 weeks out, I went to Florida. They sent me to Florida.
2 weeks out from the election?
2 weeks out, 2 weeks before the election. So
Oh,
I went
voting.
over
Yeah,
there
yeah.
to be
Okay.
in a headquarters over there. And
Okay. And what part of Florida was that?
Santa Rosa County, it was near Destin and between Destin and
Okay.
Pensacola.
That's so wild because, I mean, with the whole wild Florida recount and the Supreme Court and the
Yeah, we
hanging
were.
chads, I mean, it was all in Florida.
We were there. We were
So,
there.
yeah.
And
So that was 4 years
well,
later.
I had a couple of things happen there. That one was not good, but it worked out okay. But I had the headquarters was in a shopping center, and we had kids who came
Yeah.
in and would go out to the houses and knock on doors, and we had cell phones as telephones to call people to say go vote. And there was a
Yeah.
little store next door that had supplies, and I went next door to get something, I don't know, and I walked down the sidewalk, and as I did, I knew I was going to be attacked. There was a group, and it
Oh, wow.
was, I think they called it oh gosh, MoveOn.org. Move On. I think that was it. Anyway, it was a huge, well, countrywide organization, and in some places they were armed. And so
Yeah.
I knew that was happening, and I was by myself. So I just didn't look at them, and I just kept walking. And they stormed into the headquarters around me and started asking me things that I knew they wanted to get me to say and be on TV. And
Mm,
so I got the police there, and it all calmed down, but it was very scary. And when I got back to my headquarters in Atlanta and looked up some emails from back when, it was flooded with warnings about this group and how to
oh,
watch
wow.
out for guns, and it was just awful. Here you have, people working so hard to help the country, and a man who's trying to lead it in a good way, um, and then you have this rage, and people are getting killed that way. It was it was really hard, but it was
Yeah.
also I loved knowing I was working towards helping him get there, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was amazing. After
Yeah. So what was election day like? He won. So what was that like?
Well, it was crazy because in Pensacola there was a wonderful guy named Nick, and he was pretty much head of the whole area. And Nick and I'd gotten to be good friends. He was a great guy, and he would call me and he'd say, "Dee, we have got to get the count from your headquarters. See, you send people over to the place they're voting, and you ask people
Yeah.
outside, do you mind telling me who you voted for? And that's the way they get this count." Well, the girl
Yeah.
that was sent over there decided she didn't want to do it anymore, but she didn't tell anybody. So we're not getting the
Oh, no.
number. And there's a
Yeah.
lawyer in my office, headquarters there, that is not thinking it's a problem. And Nick is screaming, saying, "We've got to get the numbers." And I said, "No." So we were trying to get our numbers, and that's the behind the scenes when you're trying to, the numbers are on the board all over the TVs. That's what's
Hmm.
going on. So that was pretty
Yeah.
exciting. And then we thought he'd won. And then, I had a hotel room way down the road because we were in hurricane damaged area and there weren't many hotels, but I thought it was over, and then it wasn't. It was just,
Yeah.
it's crazy, but he won, and that was
Yeah.
wonderful.
So
And
he won. I mean, won 2000 in 2004. 2004, I think, was a little bit more decisive, if I remember right.
yes,
But what did what happened after that? Did you have any involvement? Was there anything?
yes,
I think you had the Christmas
well,
party. Was there anything?
yes. Well, one thing I did, um, I, uh, I wrote him letters. I never was sure if he got them any, or anything, but
Yeah.
sometimes I would get a thank you note from him, but I knew it wasn't necessarily personal. But
Yeah. From the White
I
House.
never knew if he read all of them or whatever. But anyway, I felt so strong about it. I did that. And then when he was getting to the end, it was in 2000. No, let me back up. No, let me back up. I went to the inauguration oh my Lord, oh my gosh, I
Okay,
felt like
so that would have been
oh my gosh, it was magic. I was invited to all these balls. I went there by myself. I just went around everywhere and I just was like, oh, this is amazing. And I was, 5 or 10 feet from him where he would be up on a big stage and I was down in the crowd and everything. But I thought, whoa, this is so crazy. Well, so I was in Washington, D.C., and it was snowing, and I had to go check in to get to. I got a tour of the West Wing because Nick got me in, and Nick had said, go to this guard station. Your name is there. You can get in, and da-da-da. So I go to this guard station. It's freezing cold, snow, and I'm all by myself. And I go, I'm in busy Washington, but this guard station is not near anything. So I go up there, and the guy said, I'm checked off. I'm okay, but I can't come in the guardhouse with them. And so I'm standing out there in my little coat, and this guard comes out and he says, all right, I want you to just stand here a minute. And he said, don't move, just stand there. And this car comes down, and it's George Bush. And so, he didn't stop or anything, but it was like, oh, how sweet of this guard to, help me come out in the cold with me. And he knew they were coming down because they'd been, told. And that was just, I was just like, this is just, what am I doing here? This little speck on earth that's here at this occasion. So anyway, I did that, and then I was able to go in and have a tour of the whole West Wing, and that was just wonderful. And I'm in there with Nick and everything. Well, so I did all the inauguration. Well, in 2008, I got an invitation that I thought, well, this can't be. This is fake or something. But I got an invitation to the Christmas party at the White House, and I'm supposed to come.
What year?
2008. It was when he was going out. It was his last Christmas party.
So it was last year.
So I thought, oh, this is amazing. So I answered the invitation. You have to, get your background checked and everything else. And I went, and I told you earlier that Mike had taken me to the Pentagon. Well, I asked Mike to escort me because they said I could bring somebody, and I thought, well, he's been so nice to me, I'll do this for him, and we just, reciprocated. So anyway, but the thing that I went to, the Christmas party, I thought, well, this will be neat. I can see the White House, and maybe I'll get to see him somehow or other. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. So in the middle of the party, they come and get all these Marines and these, dressed blues come down, and they say, we want you to come downstairs to this room. And so they take us down there, and we're in line. And I'm thinking, oh, dear God, I'm going to be able to shake hands with him. This is really nice. So we get down there, and it's the big oval room that you see when he interviews people and stuff. So he's in there, and we're slowly moving up the line, Mike and I. And I'm realizing, oh, my Lord, we're going in, just the two of us in there. So we get up to the thing, and I'm standing there, and the whoever announces Deenie McKeever. And President Bush comes running over and throws his arms around me and says, Deenie! And I'm like, holy cow. I was like, oh, my gosh. And so he keeps his arm around me, and we're supposed to have a picture made, and so we get over there, and he's talking to me, and I'm just, just like this. And the photographer says, we got to move on now. We got to get going. He said, we're just staying right here. You just hold on. We're talking, and we're going to, just give me a minute here. And that's the way it was. I was overcome. I was so overcome, but I had enough sense of myself that when we finished the photograph and Laura came over and we were talking for a moment, I did want to tell him that I felt that there were times that I felt he was, I can't remember exactly my words, but that he would have done so much to be a good leader and to change America, and to that he had changed me, that I felt there were days when I was going through tough stuff, and I would look at him and see what he was going through, and I thought, if he can go through that, I can go through what I'm going through. And it was so personal. And then I walked out of the room and burst into tears, and the Marines were all over me saying, "Are you okay?" So I just was so emotional. It was just amazing to have that connection.
Yeah.
With him. It was astounding.
Is there any other stories from your volunteering on the campaign or after that you haven't shared that you'd want to that we haven't already covered?
I think that covered that. And I think we've pretty much covered everything. I think that we didn't get to McKeever's first ride, but just briefly that I started a nonprofit for wounded warriors and amputees that ran 10 years, and we had therapy.
And you'd started that. That was 2006, 2008. You were doing. Tell us about the Good Morning America thing. The catalyst there.
Okay. I had, well, of course, my dad was in the amputee field, and he was in the Army, and then I had some good friends who had been military and were retired, so I was connected in those ways, and then the horses, and I knew horses were, now I met Ed, so I knew horses were therapy, and I saw Good Morning America,
and
they had like a 1 minute clip showing the horses at the fort that is in Washington, D.C., and the horses are the ones who carry the caissons for the funerals in the cemetery there. And they were saying it was a pilot program, and they were using the amputees from Walter Reed to be on these horses. And they said, "We hope it'll go." Well, I said, I'm standing there sobbing, saying, "It's got to go. This is everything together that is so good." And
all of the pieces came together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I started trying to get in touch with whoever was in charge of that, and I found her. She was a commander, retired naval commander. And Mary Jo and I got to be good friends and spent hours on the phone with Laurie and myself, and you were involved, and we all connected with people who were doing things with horses. And at the time, there was a large horse organization, and I thought, well, if they could get their act together, they could pull this all together. But one of the hard things was that if you're going to do this, you've got to do it right. You can't take these wounded warriors and do it wrong. So I ended up doing my own thing with the ones in the Atlanta area. And I started out with the amputees that were not necessarily military. They were from business and all of that. And then later, and some were military, and then we enlarged it. But it turned out to be McKeever's first ride, named after Daddy. And we did it for 2 years.
Now, obviously, McKeever is your last name and his last name, but why first ride?
Because the company that the organization, the nonprofit we connected to, who had the liability insurance and all the things we needed, did first golf, first tennis, different first, and did small things. I wanted to get as many people as I could, and so we ended up with this huge group. And we ended up doing things like, one-on-one with a horse, and people don't have to ride a horse to feel the spirit of it. I asked a Marine one time what his feeling was when he was standing next to the horse for basically maybe 5 minutes, and he said, "I felt empathy. That horse knew I was hurting, and it's the best feeling I've had since I've come back from Iraq." It was amazing. So we had, but McKeever's grew because I wanted the families to be involved too. The people who came back had families that were hurting too. And so we had carriage rides and roping and, all sorts of things, food and music. And it turned out to be a wonderful, wonderful time. And I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, you did 15 events from 2009 to 2016, most of them in Atlanta, but you had a couple others that were...
Yeah, we did several. Actually, Ed and I went to Europe, and we did some in Rome, Italy. And they had
Yeah.
us on TV and everything, and the people over there had never seen anything like it, and so we presented
Yeah.
it as something they could get going over there. Yeah, so that was great.
Now tell us about the experience itself. Like, what was it like to go to McKeever's first ride as someone with maybe an artificial limb, maybe it's a leg or an arm, or kind of give us, what was the experience like for them, and what were the different things that happened there?
Well, when we first started, we did one-on-one, and this was before McKeever's first ride. We just did the therapy with some of the folks who were in hospitals in Atlanta, and so we got to see how they felt around the horse. They may have ridden or not. That didn't matter. It was the spirit of the horse being there with them. It's just something that happens. And what happened was we heard their stories. They don't usually they do not talk about things when they come back because they don't want to feel that pain. They don't want to open those
Mm.
doors. And yet the horses, by listening and being in spirit with them, really brought that out. We heard about homelessness. We heard about drinking. We heard all the rough stuff that they were experiencing and feeling from trying to get rid of the pain that they had seen so many people blow up in front of them, some of them. And so
Yeah.
that was amazing. So when they kept telling us that that was the best they had felt since Iraq and they were able to talk about it, once they talk about it, it releases some of that pain. So that's what we tried to do in McKeever's in a bigger scale with a lot more fun involved and not just one-on-one. And so they got their kids on the horses. They drove carriages. They got to rope, and feel they felt respected. They felt
Hmm.
seen. They felt somebody cared. And they felt a camaraderie because of all the ones that came along with them, and
Yeah.
because we cared about them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so tell us about, I mean, so we talked a little bit about Lori Johnson before, and she's since passed. Um, but she was heavily involved in McKeever's first ride, a big part of it. You're a co-founder.
Yes.
What were some of the things she did, especially with like the teens and getting them involved in
Mhm.
this? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that was so great. She never wanted to get credit for anything she did, and so although she was right in there from the beginning, but she helped us with the website, and you did too. You built that website for us, and Laurie added stories to it. You added pictures. It's still up. It's an amazing website, and it really showed so much of the healing that went on with this, but the fun too. And she
Yeah.
was an idea person. She was great, but she loved those teens, and she had all these ideas for creativity for them at the McKeever's. She did painted shirts for them, and just everything. And she had teenagers herself, so she had them very involved. And she's a horsewoman, so
And
she was just a huge package altogether, and was so much of the heart and soul of McKeever's. And yeah,
yeah, and
you too. You were the website was amazing, and it still is with so much information out there of healing and health. And yeah, it was great.
the teens would volunteer. What were some of the things they were doing to serve? They were checking people in. They were helping people with the different
Yes, and they made
activities, right?
boxes. We sent boxes over,
Oh
and
yeah, the boxes. I forgot about that.
I remember one military person came over and said, "Oh, these little packs of little teeny swabs that you can clean your hands with. That's what we bathed with. That was our bath in the field.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was something the kids thought. Whoa, that's really getting it. Seeing a side of it there. But she was
Yeah.
really instrumental in packaging, getting the materials to package all those boxes, and the kids. That made it real for them that they could do something physical and personal to send to people over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so much of McKeever's first ride, and all the events you did, and as it kind of grew and evolved over the years, it was a culmination of all the things you had gone through before in terms of organizing and planning and inviting and creating these events. You'd sort of learned all the lessons on how to do it in these different seasons of life you've shared with us. And you were also, a performer at these events. You did this sort of horse with the
Yes.
flags in this
Oh
show, and you had speakers. Tell us about that
my
that
gosh.
part of it.
Well, the fun part was we had Ed's daughter was a wonderful trainer too, and she had gathered a group of us. We called ourselves the Rusty Spurs because we were all over 50, and we were her first team that she made, a drill team that she did choreography for. Now she has a whole
Yeah.
academy. She's teaching all these young kids now, but so she was teaching us how to do. Well, she taught us how to hold flags and ride, and that's not easy. Those flags are heavy,
Yeah.
and you got to hold them just right, or they fall down. And we were a bunch of nuts. And so when I suggested that we do a thing for the drill team with the drill team for McKeever's, as an opening of the show, everybody went just into nervous. I mean, we went into this. Oh, there's no way we can do this thing. Well, we ended up doing it. It was marvelous. We were all wonderful, and it turned out great. And it was just carrying that flag. Oh my gosh, it was just amazing. So yeah, we did that, and I forgot what you asked me.
Oh, so what about the speakers? You actually brought
Oh,
in speakers
speakers.
and
Oh Lord,
bands
yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, we ended up. Dale was the most wonderful one, I guess. He was a double amputee, and Dale and I met because we were both invited to a Bush summit at his library after he was
Mm.
president,
George
and
Bush. Yeah.
yes, George Bush, George W. And so he um, there was a meeting about how do we help the vets, and he had gotten invited for certain reasons, and I was. So a friend, somebody in the nonprofit that had worked on helping me get McKeever's, told me about Dale, and said you need to keep. She said Deenie's going to be at this summit or something, and she'll be back soon. He said, "Oh, I'm going too." So Dale, anyway, long story short, he called me at the hotel and he said, "I'm in the lobby," and I said, "Well, I'm short and I wear glasses because I did at the time." And he said, "Well, I'm tall and I have two metal legs." And I met him, and he was absolutely amazing guy. And then he died, unfortunately, very young because the blood in his legs, something happened, and we never knew exactly what. But it was all of a sudden he he passed away, and it was it was hard because he was
Yeah.
wonderful. He loved Delore. He called her Doc, but she had earned
Yeah.
a doctorate, and she had a doctorate degree, and he
Yeah.
loved both of
So
us.
you
And
have
yeah,
yeah. So your dad, and your grandfather, they work in prosthetics, developing these for people who have had amputations or lost limbs, or maybe they were born without them, and you're continuing the legacy. So your father's the inspiration for this McKeever's First Ride, where you bring all of the talents you've collected over your life to put on these events. And it's got carriage rides and the shows and speakers and crafts, and you have miniature ponies running around with the
mm-hmm.
petting zoos.
And my donkey.
But yeah, yeah.
The donkey was a
How do
petting zoo.
you? Yeah, I mean, when you think about that journey, what was it about, and what was it that it gave you through that experience?
Oh, the most incredible satisfaction. I wish it could have gone on forever. But I, just seeing people come alive again. There are suicides every day for the veterans. They just can't handle the pain they went through. And unless they get help, they just can't heal themselves. And, well, I'm not going to say they can't. I'm sure there are many that have, been able to do that. But they just saw so much awfulness, and it's awful hard to come back from that. And I think we did a lot to heal those wounds and to actually present horse therapy for veterans, because that wasn't done before this. It wasn't done anywhere. They had never tried it. They did it for children, and they did it for people who had autism or something like that, but they never done anything with the wounded ones. And that was an amazing time, and it was very satisfying to know that maybe we made some difference. Yeah, it was a good plan God had. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So before we jump into the last part of this interview, where we talk about your personal faith, talk to us about dancing in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, I did. I have done a lot of things in my life, and it's really funny how some of my family hadn't seen me do some things, and some of my friends had not seen me do some things. And I've danced all my life. When I was born, I came dancing in the world. I love music and I love to dance, and over the years,
and by the way, you're sitting in a dance room right now.
Isn't it? Yes, it is. I ended up in my 90s. In Atlanta, they had a lot of dance clubs, and so you could join a swing club or country music club, country dance club, and or ballroom. You could do all that, and you could get lessons and then dance or whatever. I hated lessons because they're just so structured. I like to just dance to the music, but I love to dance. And so Dee and I had gone down to New Orleans, down to Louisiana to see Dana on her 40th birthday. And we went in the French Quarter, and they were playing all this music, and I'm hippity hopping around. And so we go into this little bar, restaurant kind of place. It's open on two sides, so people, see it standing there watching the musicians and stuff. So we go in, and we sit down, and this band is just fabulous. And this guy's standing there, a big, tall guy. He's got a washboard, he's playing the washboard, and I'm just, going like that. And so he comes over and he says, "Would you like to dance?" And I said, "Oh, would I?" Well, there's no dance floor. It's just a little spot in front of where he was standing. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "You do it and I'll follow." Well,
yeah.
It's the best dance I've ever had out of millions of dances ever in my life. And when you have a good leader, you just go. You don't have any idea where he's going, but his body tells you. And if you can listen to that, he could take you anywhere. That's what we did. Well, my daughters had never seen it before. Dee's calling Mark and saying, "Mother's doing this thing." And all the people are screaming and yelling, and they come into this, from the street. And I mean, he did everything but throw me up to the ceiling and down. I mean, it was so much fun. We just went. And afterwards, he said, "Well, you really took me through my paces." Because once a leader gets a good dancer, then they want to keep going, and and they love it too, because they can take this partner anywhere, And so I said, "Well, you're just astounding." I said, "Boy, tell me about you." And he said, "Well, my mama told me that if I took dance lessons, girls would like me." He was a champion dancer. He had won championships all over the country. And I am so mad at myself that I didn't find out how to get in touch with him another time or something to have that dance again. I mean, it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And real special. But also at my grandson's wedding, he has a friend who dances like crazy. And Chad and I danced, and later Chad came over and told me that dance was a legend. And so I've had wonderful dancers and precious dancers in my life, and it's one of the joys of my life. I let loose on it, and it's just
Yeah.
fabulous. Yeah. So yeah, that's me. Part
Yeah,
of
well,
it.
is dancing and the leading part that you describe, is that a metaphor for your life between you and God?
Oh, okay. Yes, it is. Yeah. I knew. I mean, I'd been taken to Sunday school real early, and I always, went to church, and so I was always connected to God and believe. I totally believe there's a God that created the world, and that's why we're created, and that Jesus came to show us who He is in flesh, and I got to places in my life that I couldn't control. As strong and a big leader and blah blah that I can do, I could not make my life okay, and I had to have something bigger than me, and I leaned big time on God and Jesus, and I wanted to, and I don't really separate them, but I know they're together. But you know what I'm saying. But um,
Yeah.
I I really went to a lot of Bible studies. I tried to really learn about what they wanted me to do, how to do it with the Holy Spirit, listening to that, and to be guided that way because I wanted to do good in parts of my life. And I wanted to be sure that, I did things better, and I wanted to treat people right. And I wanted to
And
right my
how was
wrong.
that? Were your parents also Christians or not?
Yes, oh yes,
And how
they
did that?
were.
Okay.
But I think Daddy and I had a lot of Daddy and I had a lot of conversations about it. I think they were typical churchgoers, but I'm not sure how close they were, to Jesus.
Yeah.
And Daddy, um, he did everything at the church. He was
Yeah.
every person at the church working and doing, and but
And was it Protestant? What were you different
we were
denominations?
Episcopalian.
What were?
We were Episcopalian.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And and mother did a lot of work at the church too. She volunteered and everything. So you sort of like doing what you're supposed to do. But I think for me there
Yeah.
was a difference in a personal relationship where you felt like Jesus was your best friend and you could talk to him and
Hmm.
and really really get help. I know there are times when I've been stopped or pushed into
Yeah.
right and wrong places, just because things would happen in my life that I didn't orchestrate or plan to have. These people I met that I was supposed to meet, um, events that came together that were life changing, and I knew they were beyond me being able to put it together. And so that's
Hmm.
where my faith came from, and now it's even stronger.
Yeah. So you've gone through this lifelong journey, um, and now I guess at some point when you're older, you start looking for a church to
Mm-hmm.
go to. So tell us about why you were looking for a church. How old were you and why you were looking, and what you found?
Well, it is kind of really interesting. So I was 2004, I believe. Yes, it was 2004. Churches began to split over laws, rules, whatever, values. And it began to be, to me, this person in the pulpit, in this church, in this building, I'm the truth. I'm the truth about God. You look at me and listen to what I say, and that's the truth. And it didn't sit in my spirit. I got so, I mean, my Holy Spirit just turned my stomach around. I may not understand exactly what's bothering me or whatever in my head or heart, but I know something's wrong. And it just didn't feel right to me. So I just started going, excuse me, to different churches to see how their structure was, what were they doing. And I never really thought about Catholics. I didn't think good or bad. I understand now there's a lot of people that think really funny things about Catholics. But
Yeah.
God literally parachuted Catholics in steps. I had to step over them to get around. I mean, it was
What are all
now,
these Catholics doing around me?
yeah, they never evangelized me, though. That they never
Okay,
were
yeah.
preaching to me or saying you need to be a Catholic and you know it's all wrong wherever. None of that. There was just a love about them, and also I would hear them talk about what they had in their church, and one was to honor Mary, and not that Mary replaced Jesus and you prayed to Mary instead of Jesus or anything. It was you honored Mary because she was the mother. She is the mother of God, and
Yeah.
Jesus, and that made sense to me. And then they have a confession. Well, I mean, yes, we're forgiven. We're all forgiven. However, guess what? We still do bad things. And I thought, well, if we had a definite confession where we said, I did this and I am sorry, you know, what a world we'd have if everybody was accountable to themselves to just put it out there and say it. And
Yeah.
I thought, well, that's cool. And then there were just other things that just felt right to me. I felt like they had a real connection to the Eucharist because of um, Jesus in the Last Supper and that his present in the Eucharist in the church. And um,
Yeah.
I love the stories of the saints that have gone before us. So it all just made sense to me. And so I started checking it out and decided that's what I wanted to do. And I love it. I just love it. I
Yeah.
always love Jesus, but I love the extras that they see and do so that we're closer to him. And I mean, I'm not saying anything else is wrong or not right. I'm not. I'm saying that for me, that's where God wanted me, and it's been a perfect place for me, and
Yeah.
a lot of good people there. Yeah. So
So what is the Catholic Church? How is it strengthened your faith, and what has it given you as far as in terms of the community of and the way they do things?
I think that we do. I was thinking about this the other night. We have certain prayers like the Rosary, and there are different uh, things that we do as a group or individually. And I was thinking, I'm so glad I know this, and I'm so glad I'm doing it. I'm doing an app that's called Hallow, and it's with the Jonathan Rumi, who is the Jesus in The Chosen, and
Okay.
he is just a great guy, and he leads you in prayers and things. And I think this is such a community because the Catholic Church is not different in Rome, Italy, or Sicily, or Hawaii, or every church has the same service every Sunday all around the world. And people think
Mm.
we don't read the Bible, but we go through the Bible a lot, and we have Bible studies at my church. But the Bible is read from the Old Testament, the New Testament, Psalms, and the Gospel is always read every church service. And so we go
Yeah.
through the Bible, and so everybody all over the world is doing things
Mm.
that you're doing, and I think that is a huge thing. You belong somewhere. When I went to ride in those countries, I went to mass in those churches. I didn't know their language, but I knew what they were saying, and it was great.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it. I've certainly had some priests that I've been very close to, and a very human. They're very human, not just up here. The Pope doesn't tell us everything to do. The Pope is a man, but there are certain, you need a head. When you have a giant organization, you need a head. And so, he's elected to be the head, and hopefully he's been the man God wanted. But he's there are certain things that he's, like I say, he's human, and there are things that can maybe not be right or whatever, because he is human, but there are certain things that he will carry out or do that come straight from Peter, who was the first pope.
Yeah, and you've been volunteering there as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love working within the church. It's funny. When I first joined, I had a lot on my plate personally, and I thought,
Yeah.
okay, and I was going to church in Atlanta. Funny enough, because I had moved to Cartersville, but I was familiar with the church in Atlanta, and I didn't really know that. I hadn't met the people up here and I didn't really know about the church up here. It's 5 minutes from my house, and so but after a while, I thought, I'm not going to drive to Atlanta church. I'm going to start up here. But I've got too much. I can't volunteer. I got to sit on the back row, and I'll be real quiet, and I don't need to meet a million people, and it's okay. I'm doing enough work in the world and whatever. Well, I'm sitting there, and I have a wonderful Kenyan family that's at our church, and Sam is up there, serving communion. His wife is reading the Bible, lecturing is what we call it, reading the Bible. His children are being Alta servers. And I'm thinking, if Sam and his family weren't here doing this, I wouldn't have a church service today. This is crazy. I've got to help. So I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'll volunteer. So I figured out who was the captain of the mass and the head of it. And I went to him after church, and I said, I introduced myself, and I said, I really would like to volunteer, but I do not want to be a Eucharistic minister, because I don't want to be standing in front of everybody. Because I didn't want that show-off thing to happen in church,
Yeah.
serving Jesus' body and blood. And so I said, I don't want. I said, I go out of town a lot, and so I probably can't serve. And he said, well, you can call me on Saturday night and let me know you can't come. I said, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. I'm not trained, so I'll train you next week. So I was like, okay.
You got rid of all your excuses? Is that what you're saying?
So the first time I served communion, I thought, Deenie, don't start bawling. I thought I ain't gonna break out and burst into tears. It was so humbling. I thought, this is so humbling to be serving, the body and blood of Christ. And now it's such an honor. It's such a humbling honor to be able to do
Yeah.
that. I'm thrilled to be able to do that. So I do that, and I am mass captain now with others at my mass, and we make sure everything's going right. Make sure that
Yeah.
all people are there to do things. And then I was on the committee, stewardship committee, which did a lot of planning, like long-term planning for the church.
Yeah.
And then I'm in a Bible study of women that do a lot of personal things. We help out a lot around
Yeah.
the church. So, yeah.
So if someone's watching this or listening and they've been hurt by the church, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think that can happen. The church is human. The priests are human. The people are human. They make mistakes. I think there's a lot going on in the gay crowd, gay community of hurt that is misunderstood. I think that's the biggest thing. It's misunderstood because people don't hear the whole message. The message is we want everybody to be in the church. We want love in the church. But then we do follow God's commandments and God's, the thing that I think about God is he's like the daddy you're holding the hand at the road. And there's a semi coming down the road, and he's saying, I don't want that semi to hit you, so you stand here and hold my hand. I'll tell you when to cross the road. And I think there are times when God does that with us, and the things that God says, that's not a good idea, is because it's going to harm us. And I don't think it's the church that's saying it, it's the church that's standing up for those things that God has said. And so that's where I come from on that. And I think there's always been a lot of hurt under the name of religion, and I hate that.
Yeah.
It's
well, I know you have a final.
misunderstanding.
Yeah. Well, I know you have a final story to share.
I'm sorry.
Not assuming. Yeah. But before you share your final story, is there anything else you wanted to share, or did you want to sort of summarize the
I
life of Deenie?
can't believe we talked 3 hours. I was concerned about 1 hour. What have we done? Oh my gosh. Well, I would like to end on this because this is the biggest thing. I think one of the biggest things that ever happened. So we talked about Daddy and what he believed, what he didn't believe. We never talked, never talked real deep about it. He was always a little, you know, uh, I think he was a little awkward about it, about being personal on it.
With his relationship with God, you mean,
Yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
talking about it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so Daddy was talking to Mother one night, and she said, he said, do you believe in heaven? And he said, Daddy was very logistical. He wanted, he's got everything's got to have a way to work it out. He said, there's too many people. Where would they all be? There's no where they could be. So no, I don't really think so. Well, the next day he had a stroke, and he was unconscious. Um, he was unconscious for 10 days in a bed, and my dad was very athletic, so he was strong and muscular, and he was could lift and do all sorts of things. Um, and he was flat on his back for 10 days. And I just felt he could hear us. And so I would talk to him. Well, the day came when we had to unplug the things that were keeping him alive. The nurses had said, all right, this is what the monitor's going to do, and he'll start breathing hard, and that's it.
Mm.
Well, I had sat with him. My family had all left, and I was sitting with him, and it was hours, and I was sitting there, and I was talking to him and stuff, and I went outside while they were doing something with him, and I said, Lord, I don't know if I can. I mean, it's been hours, and I want to stay. Keep me, help me to be able to stay long enough that I. But I'm tired and I'm hungry. I have to go to the bathroom. I mean, I was long hours. I was staying right with him, and I didn't want to fall out, and so I
Mm-hmm.
prayed God would help me, and I went back in, and the monitor started going, and I think it was going, and uh, so I just kept saying, I don't know, this had to have been from God, because I didn't think about this statement. I wasn't intending to. I hadn't thought in my head or anything. I just kept saying, Daddy, put out your arms, and Jesus is going to meet you. There is a heaven, I know it. And I just kept saying, put out your arms, put out your arms. And after, I don't know how long it was, my daddy rose from the bed straight up, opened his eyes, and put his hands out, and fell back down. And his eyes were yearning. It was a look I've never seen in my daddy's face. And I knew I had stood with one foot in heaven and one foot on earth. There was no question in my mind. I mean, you can't see that and not believe. I mean, I know Jesus was meeting me, and I know that's where he is. So I hope everybody out there joins the club and goes to heaven too. It's very important. I think we do have an afterlife, and I have such a peace that my daddy was there, and that my mother is too, and that I'll see him. And that's very important. You know, and it's good, real good.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your life with us today, Deenie. I love you. Thank you, and I look forward to sharing this with others.
I love you too, and I'm so honored that you asked and were interested in all of my life. I'm floored that we were on this long, but I hope it be a message of encouragement and love in different ways for people that out there that may be hurting or maybe indecisive about things, and maybe that will matter. That's what I hope, that showing this is inspirational people. I would like to inspire them for good things. That was something that I felt God wanted me to do. And it's been
Yeah.
a pleasure to be here. And sometimes in my life, I've said, "Oh my goodness, what am I doing here?" And it's like, well, God said you had to do it, or God's given it to you as a gift. He has given me many
Yeah.
things as a gift, and I'm very grateful for my life and where I've been able to be and the people in my life. And you are one of them, right up on the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love you too. Thank you for this. What a gift. Thank you.